brief, where we start the day by slowing the story down just enough for you to get on board, be fully caught up and briefed in on the developments that are shaping your world today. So we'll talk from global political power plays playing themselves out in Europe to deep questions about authority, accountability, and justice here at home. This morning's program is also about who holds power, how it's exercised, and what happens when systems are stretched to the limit. So welcome to it. Stay with us. Among some of what we will tell you over the next 3 hours. A royal row with customary or even legal consequences. Can a king dismiss a chief? A very public fallout between Abatembu King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo and Mvezo Chief Mandla Mandela has reignited those questions, old questions really, about power within the country's traditional leadership systems. Speaking at an African Transformation Movement Community Development Session, ATM's Community Development Session, King Dalindyebo has laid into Mandela, accusing him of disrespect and saying that he was stripping him of the chieftainship. At the heart of the feud between the two men are their polar opposite views on the conflict in Gaza, with Mandela championing the cause of the Palestinians and speaking out against the genocide, while Dalindyebo has become an increasingly vocal supporter of Israel. Mandela was not the only chief to be told he was being stripped of chieftainship, with the Amakhosi from Amaqhiya and Inkosi Vulithuba Sangoni purportedly removed by King Dalindyebo. But can he do that? Can he? Is that how these things work? Does a king actually have the authority to strip a chief of their title by declaration alone? Or is that whole system now governed by both tradition and custom, but also deeply entrenched in the laws of the country? We'll unpack what the implications of this feud are, and we'll speak to Thulasizwe Simelane, who is the president of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Contralesa. And we'll be in conversation with Thulasizwe Simelane at about 10 to 7 this morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa says specialized courts for big infrastructure tender disputes will help speed up development and cut costly delays by ensuring that whenever a dispute arises after a tender has been awarded, which almost happens almost invariably in these big contracts, with the result that many of them are delayed significantly. So his solution is to introduce specialized courts with dedicated judges and dedicated courtrooms and separate court roles to try and fast track the resolution of these disputes so that the work is not held back for a very long period of time. But critics argue that it risks reshuffling scarce judicial resources without really fixing the real crisis. The country has had roughly the same number of judges for more than 16 years, and we gleaned that from an opinion piece penned by Mbegezeli Benjamin, research and advocacy officer at Judges Matter in Daily Maverick, where he reveals that, we've worked with roughly 250 judges since 2009. 250 judges since 2009 with no substantial increases in the last 16 years. But the caseload on the end has exploded. And in Johannesburg alone, for example, the busiest local division, 34 judges, we are told, handled something in the region of 7,253 civil cases in 2009. So 7,200 thereabouts, 2009. Compare that with what they dealt with in 2024, and that number had gone up to 24,000 thereabouts. Number of civil cases. You're not talking criminal cases, just civil cases with the same number of judges. So the workload is increasing, and Mbegezeli Benjamin argues in his piece on Daily Maverick that what the president has done, without expanding the judiciary itself, no amount of specialization will deliver expeditious justice, and says the intervention, while well-intentioned, actually misses the point. That is by Mbegezeli Benjamin. So Mbegezeli Benjamin is my guest at about 7:10 this morning. Then lastly, let me flag this story for you. A controversial judicial conduct tribunal ruling, the recent one, on the Eastern Cape Judge President Selbin Benenge. It's caused quite a fair amount of debate, depending on how you view the outcome, right? So it has sparked a fierce debate about how sexual harassment is defined and judged at the highest levels of the legal system. While the senior judge involved in that incident, Judge Selbin Benenge, the Eastern Cape Judge President, was found guilty of misconduct, the tribunal stopped short of recognizing sexual harassment. That is the argument, at least being presented by my guest at about 20 past 7, Professor Amanda House, writing in Sunday Times. Basically, the argument that the senior judge was found guilty of misconduct, the tribunal stopped short of recognizing sexual harassment, raising alarms about how power imbalance, consent and vulnerability are being understood in those fora. Critics say the ruling prioritizes, in fact, Professor Amanda House specifically says the ruling prioritizes formal equality while ignoring the reality of hierarchy and coercion in the workplace. So Professor Amanda House, Saatchi Chair in Gender Politics at Stellenbosch University, will be my guest at 20 past 7. And we'll be talking about why this case matters far beyond one individual and what it signals about accountability, gender justice, and public trust in the judiciary. So that conversation coming up at about 20 past 7. The Morning Brief team is at full strength once again this morning with N. Musa, keeping you updated with your half-hourly news updates. Zaikan will bring you all the sporting action, both on and off the field of play, throughout the 3 hours. Rob Byrne has his eye trained on the country's highways and byways and will make sure that you are first to know if there are any snarl-ups on your route this morning. Melissa Buta will complete the picture with the Morning Brief in brief, and that's coming up in a moment. And Dauleng Lechela, as always, right on the money with the economy, business and the markets, and we'll give you an update in each of the 3 hours coming up. And of course, Sipho Mantula, as always, on standby with a snapshot of the news moving the needle on the African continent and her diaspora. That's his Africa update, and that's coming up at about 20 to 7 this morning. Your calls complete the conversation, and they make the conversation that moves us. So the number to dial for that, 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. So that's what's ahead this morning. Sharp conversations, real context, and voices that help make sense of power where it matters the most. You're listening to The Morning Brief. Welcome to it.
At Discovery Health Medical Scheme, we're for health. For family health that shouts.
Push, Mom, higher!
And whispers.
Mummy, I threw up.
With unlimited virtual GP consults on our Smart Saver series, we're for growing health, for rewarding health, and for your family's best health. Like no other. Join Discovery Health Medical Scheme and add your child from 895 Rand per month. Discovery Health Medical Scheme is a registered medical scheme.
It's time to say yes to Montreux Jazz Festival Franschhoek, happening in Franschhoek from the 27th to the 29th of March 2026. It's 3 days, 2 stages, the Arches and Jazz Village, and a jazz-inspired multi-genre experience, plus a chilled Sunday slowdown to close. Featuring the legendary Salif Keita, Herbert Zwayedi, Andile Yenana, Ayanda Sigate, Sisonke Konti, Madala Gunene, and Sibusile Kaba, plus Mandisi Jankis, Billy Monama, Kesivan Naidu, Mos Mohale, Vusi Mahlasela, and more than 20 additional artists still to be announced. This is where Montreux meets Africa. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster or visit mjfsa.com in partnership with the SABC.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, let's get it started with the morning brief. In brief, Melissa Puta is in studio, standing by with that. Good morning to you, Melissa. Let's talk about former President Jacob Zuma, the leader of the MK party, and his relationship with his former party that he says remains his party.
Yes, good morning, Thulasizwe. So former President Jacob Zuma says he will fight tooth and nail to be reinstated as a member of the ANC, even if it requires legal action. Speaking in Inanda in the KZN, Zuma said he still considers himself an ANC member and hopes the ANC and Umkhonto weSizwe party will eventually merge. The ANC expelled Zuma in July of 2024 for violating party rules by forming and supporting the MK party while remaining an ANC member, saying he breached its constitution by failing to campaign or vote for the party. Zuma argues his expulsion was unlawful and has threatened court action, with the MK party backing him and citing provisions for dual membership. President Cyril Ramaphosa has acknowledged that the MK party siphoned votes from the ANC, while former President Thabo Mbeki claimed apartheid-era security structures were reactivated to boost the MK party's electoral success.
I don't even know what to say to that.
No, you know.
The ANC itself says dual membership is only allowed with parties that are fraternal, that are in alliance with the ANC. So unless MK party has become a fraternal party. But anyway, let's leave it there. We'll see how it plays itself out, that particular conundrum. Let's talk about Zambia. The situation with foot and mouth disease in South Africa has our neighbor worried.
Yes, so Zambia has suspended all livestock import permits from South Africa with immediate effect to protect its livestock industry from foot and mouth disease. The ban announced by Benny Munyama of the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock covers cloven hoofs animals, livestock feeds, trophies, skins, hives, hooves and related products, and all previously issued permits have been revoked. The measures will be reviewed depending on developments in South Africa. The outbreak in South Africa, which resurfaced in early 2025, has spread to all 9 provinces, prompting President Cyril Ramaphosa to declare a national disaster. Beef exports have dropped, including a 69% decline in shipments to China after a ban on South African red meat. In response, South Africa plans to vaccinate 14 million cattle over the next year using both domestically produced and imported vaccines from Botswana, Turkey and Argentina. The government is mobilizing a task team of farmers and experts to manage this crisis. So hopefully there is something, some movement rather, or progress.
So we now expect a court appearance in this really, really horrific murder that was caught on camera involving an e-hailing driver who was killed. And there's going to be that court appearance of the one suspect that has now been arrested.
Yes, so 22-year-old Isaac Satlat, an e-hailing driver in Pretoria, was killed by 3 passengers after accepting what he believed would be his final short trip home. The pickup was in Attridgeville, close to where he lived in the Pretoria CBD, where when he failed to return home, his family grew concerned. His body and the borrowed vehicle he was driving were later found in Mshongoville. Dashcam footage shows 2 suspects assaulting and strangling him before dumping his body and driving off. The car is said to belong to his internship supervisor, who had led it to him so that he could earn extra income. Satlat, originally from Nigeria, was completing an automotive mechanical engineering internship and was due to graduate in March. Transport Minister Barbara Creasy has condemned the attack, and the one female suspect who has been arrested is expected to appear in court today, with more arrests anticipated. Satlat's family is arranging to repatriate his body to Nigeria and has launched a fundraising campaign to support them during this time. So that's quite a sad one coming out this weekend.
It's one of those that really speak to the state we are in as far as crime is concerned. The crisis that we face. Nowhere is safe. No activity is safe in our daily lives. Thank you for that, Melissa. That's Melissa Puta with the morning brief in brief.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
On the weather front, no impact-based warnings from the South African Weather Service, but they do have an advisory that they want you to be aware of. It says very hot to extremely hot and uncomfortable conditions are expected over most parts of the Western Cape as well as the western parts of the Northern Cape. So do take care in those provinces. The rest of your weather will be looking like this. Pretoria, cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy with a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 26. Same conditions in Johannesburg, cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 11 to 24. Vereeniging, cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 11 to 24. Mbombela, cloudy, 15 to 23. Polokwane will be cloudy in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 12 to 28. Mahikeng, cloudy with isolated showers and rain, 16 to 24. Bloemfontein, partly cloudy, 13 to 27. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 15 to 30. Uppington will be fine at first, otherwise partly cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 22 to 32. Cape Town will be fine, 23 to 37. George, fine, 16 to 28. Gqeberha, fine, 16 to 27. Gugompo City, formerly East London, fine, 15 to 27. Durban will be cloudy with isolated showers and rain, 18 to 26. Richards Bay will be cloudy with isolated showers and rain, 21 to 25. And lastly, Pietermaritzburg will have morning fog patches, otherwise cloudy with isolated showers and rain, 12 to 23.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
23 minutes after 6. At the Munich Security Conference, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio moved to reassure European leaders that Washington remains committed to the transatlantic alliance, declaring that America's destiny will, quote-unquote, always be intertwined with Europe's, while reiterating sharp criticisms of European immigration, climate and trade policies. Rubio struck a markedly more conciliatory tone than last year's address at the same gathering, delivered then by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. And in this address, Marco Rubio emphasizing partnership over division. Rubio told delegates in Munich that the United States does not seek to abandon Europe, but to revitalize old friendships, describing the transatlantic relationship as the foundation of the greatest civilization in human history. Let's speak to Professor Anthony van Nieuwkerk, who is a professor of international and diplomacy studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time as always. So, chalk and cheese, if you compare the speech delivered by the Vice President of the U.S. last year at the Munich Security Conference versus what has now been delivered by Marco Rubio. Yes, the criticisms remain, but the tone is markedly different. What does it signal to you?
Yeah, good morning, Tula. I call this annual event now the Munich Insecurity Conference because there's little talk of peace, rather the preparation for war. And this is the war against the enemy, perceived enemy, which is Russia. And so indeed, Marco Rubio came with a refined version of the Trump administration's foreign policy or international relations orientation towards Europe, which is to work with the Europeans in countering Russia, in preparation for bigger enemies elsewhere in the world later on, which of course refers to the developments in Asia, in China. And so what Marco Rubio was trying to explain to the very anxious collection of Europeans who seem to be very worried about a coming war is that America will participate and regard the Europeans as allies, maybe not as friends, not yet, but as allies. And he was explaining that America stands by to continue to sell weapons to Europe. If they can't make enough weapons, remember Europe is turning their economies into a war economies, with Germany in the lead. And Marco Rubio was saying, as an ally working with you, we stand by to sell you more weapons. Just give us the money. And of course, Zelensky featured largely in the events. But I want to say something else in a minute or two, if I can. Marco Rubio's presentation went much further and deeper than just explaining that the Americans and the political leaders of Europe and NATO is sort of together in fighting the enemy, which is Russia. He was just explaining that the Western civilization needs to be rescued from another bigger threat over 400 or 500 years, and that is decolonization and the politics of the global South. Now, if we are members of the global South, we have to understand what Marco Rubio is saying. He's saying that Europe and America must work together to counter godless communist revolutions that overthrew European masters in the global South. And he went even further by saying the global South has the strategic minerals and the natural resources that we need to get our economies going and to fight Russians and other enemies. And right there in making that speech at the Munich Insecurity Conference, he was laying down the law as far as the Americans are concerned. Africa in particular is ready for the taking. And I think that is the context that we have to understand.
Sure. Say a bit more then about that, because I think it slightly moves the conversation from a preoccupation with the transatlantic relationship, the policies on which they agree and disagree, climate, immigration, etc., and the expenditure on defense and security, but casts it in a different light. Does it partly explain, for example, this whole focus on, the new Western Hemisphere focus and what we saw happening in Venezuela, for example?
Yes, no, I think you're on the right track, Thulasizwe. This is how I think we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this annual Munich, Peace and Security Conference? Why would the Americans go there? What is the purpose of NATO? What is the purpose of this transatlantic relationship? Why are the European leaders so anxious to keep it going? And what are the Americans doing there, in fact? So if you take a step back, and I'll do it quickly, remember when Trump, in his first term, was sort of germinating the idea, and in his second term now, sort of brought the idea to full bloom, which is that the MAGA movement, Make America Great Again, the worldview of this particular group of very conservative Americans is to restore the pride, the dignity, the power, and the influence of America. And they will do that in their own national interest. And they will do it by declaring certain parts of the world as belonging to them. For example, the Western Hemisphere. And they will not tolerate any challenge to their authority in, for example, Latin America. And they then say we don't need institutions of global governance, for example, the United Nations, or wait for them to bring peace and security and stability or to work in our interest. We will now do it ourselves. So if there are threats in Latin America, we will simply go there, regardless of international law, and remove the threat. If we think Israel is an ally and we have Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas as a threat, we will simply go there, provide weapons and work with them and bomb these countries to remove the threat. And this is how we have to understand Rubio's appearance in Europe to say, Europeans, you're on your own. We don't want to sponsor your activities, but you have to grow up now, be as a responsible global citizen, work with us to remove the Russian threat. We'll give you weapons, and if necessary, we'll participate in your activities. But as far as we as the Americans are concerned, we have to look after our own. And he also says, if I can maybe round it off, we will now look elsewhere in the world to see where we can find natural resources, oil, gas, critical minerals, the kind of stuff that a modern economy needs. We will go there and take it. And when you look at some of the developments in Africa over the past few weeks and months, it is very clear that America is not regarding Africa as unimportant. They might not write Africa up in their national defense or national security policies, but they are present in Africa and they are making deals, for example, in the DRC to make sure that they can put their hands on these scarce minerals. And in the process, counter Russian and Chinese influence.
All right. Prof, thank you for that, for those insights, really giving us something to think about, to ponder about in these truly complex times that we live in. Let's go straight to N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the woman arrested in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West is expected to appear in the Atteridgeville Magistrates Court today. She's facing charges including hijacking and murder. Authorities in the Western Cape say foot and mouth disease poses a major risk for the livestock farming sector in the province. About 15,000 people are employed in the 13.5 billion rand sector. And heavy rains and high winds have triggered floods, mudslides and power outages on New Zealand's North Island. Wind gusts of almost 200 kilometers per hour hit parts of the capital, Wellington. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Busy coming into Galulis from Ekurhuleni side this morning. A couple of breakdowns and a crash involving a truck. All of that is unfolding after the N12 and R24 routes merge, coming into the interchange. So very heavy driving in from sort of Craft Road or from the Edenvale exit on the R24. The very busy N1 going north at the Deepcliff interchange is heavy this morning with a breakdown before you get to Deepcliff. So very heavy. That N1 already backed up to the N12 Potch Highway. That's a problem if you're coming in from Craftsmere, Eldos or Lenasia side of town wanting to get up to Joburg this morning. It's a heavy route and it's very heavy this morning. William Mandela and Leslie, very slow there coming out of the Four Ways area this morning. Cedar Road in from Dane Fern is already busy. And Eskia and Pathlele at Flower Street, those traffic lights down if you're coming off the mighty Mopoli Highway into Pretoria or approaching on Vanderhof from the Gardens area coming onto Eskia. That's all badly backed up. Durban, very slow getting out on the N2 northbound from Clare Road Bridge up through Spaghetti Junction to Westwood Mall. It just appears a little bit slower than it normally would given the roadworks there. The N3 or the N3 at least getting through the M13 Paradise Valley into Pinetown. There's permanent roadwork, so that's very slow. And Cape Town, I was just having a general look and feel of the traffic maps that we monitor here, the live maps, and it's just a busy back to work Monday. N1's already at Kraaifontein to Sable Road, N2 at Khayelitsha, and then from the airport all the way through to the M5, M3 north to Paradise Road, already filling up coming through from Constantia. So looks like a busy Monday ahead for Cape Townians on the highways and the byways. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. So let's start the Premiership, the Premier League. Sekhukhune United have climbed and they're in the top 3, are they?
Thulas, wow, Sekhukhune United has definitely entered the chat, top 3. And again, this morning, I'm telling you, people are going to be paying attention. They're going to be checking the table twice this morning because, yeah, no noise, no drama, just climbing there, Sekhukhune United. They had a 2-0 win over Orbit College at the Peter Mokaba Stadium. It was Leshlohonolo Mojela who struck in each half to secure Babina Noko's 9th win of the season, leapfrogging both Amazulu and Kaizer Chiefs on the log. Now for Orbit College, it was a 7th defeat in 8 matches. They remain second from the bottom and winless, and that's since November. Some CAF action. The group stages of the CAF Champions League and Confederation Cup have wrapped up with the quarterfinal lineups now confirmed. Stellenbosch FC bowed out of the Confed Cup after a goalless draw with Singida Black Stars in Cape Town. Elsewhere, AS FAR Rabat, Wydad AC and Manyema Union all book their places in the knockout rounds. FA Cup, Arsenal storming into the 5th round with a dominant 4-0 win over Wigan. The Gunners scored all 4 goals inside the opening half hour to keep their quadruple ambitions firmly alive. Let's go to cricket now with the Proteas women's. Their all-rounder Nadine de Klerk saying that they have been intentional about dominating more of their bilateral series and not just showing up at major tournaments. De Klerk was speaking ahead of today's final T20 International against Pakistan in Badodi, having already wrapped up the series with an unassailable 2-0 lead, having also defeated Ireland in December. South Africa are bracing for a busy 4 months ahead.
I think that's something we spoke about a lot over the last couple of months, basically, is I think we we spoke about it a lot, where we probably didn't have the best bilateral series before. We kind of rock up at World Cups and we shocked the whole world, really, but we knew we were much better than that and capable of winning series as well. So I think winning that Island series, coming here, dominating as well, obviously being under pressure in that first game and having someone like Kayla on debut winning that game just shows that the depth of the squad is growing, and I think just the character of this team as well, and we're finding ways to win, which is great. And I think I said it with the Island series as well, although we're 2-0 up, we still want to start whitewashing teams and really dominate world cricket and show them what we're made of. So I think it's really important for us going into the next game as well.
That's the Proteas women's all-rounder Nadine de Klerk. They're taking on Pakistan, and you can catch the action live on SABC Sport from 6 p.m. More cricket now. India booked their place in the T20 World Cup Super 8s with a 61-run win over Pakistan, and that was in Colombo. The defending champions posted 176 before bowling out Pakistan for just 114. And finally, South Africa's Maxim Chomiton has broken his own national 5-kilometer road record in Spain. The 25-year-old clocked 13 minutes 12 seconds in Seville, shaving a second off his previous best and continuing his record-breaking run. We'll be back with the sports run, top of the hour. For SAFM, I'm Zaikan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, Dowling, good morning to you. Happy Monday. Let's start in the United States. Tell me about inflation and what it's been doing over the month of January.
Morning, Thulas, and happy Monday. Now, over in the US, inflation cooled more than expected in January, offering some hope that price pressures are somewhat easing. Annual consumer inflation slowed to 2.4%, down from 2.7% in December. Core inflation, which strips out volatile items like food and energy, is to 2.5%. This is its lowest level since 2021. Now, on a monthly basis, prices rose just 0.2%. Digging deeper into that print, shelter costs, which make up more than a third of the index, increased modestly, while energy prices fell 1.5%. Now, the softer reading has boosted expectations that the Fed could cut rates as early as June. But inflation remains above the 2% target, and policymakers remain concerned amid mixed signals from the labor market.
And then take me over on the opposite end across the Pacific in Japan and tell me about the economy there. You're saying that it barely grew in Q4 of last year.
Hey, you had to think about that ocean, hey?
You know what it is, man. You know, Indian, Atlantic, Pacific.
Pacific,
yeah, now I'm spinning the globe in my head.
All right, over across there by the Pacific, the world's third largest economy narrowly avoided slipping into a technical recession at the end of last year, but growth remains fragile to us. Now, GDP expanded by just 0.1% in the fourth quarter, reversing a 0.7% contraction in the previous 3 months, but the figure was below expectations of 0.4%. On an annualized basis, output rose 0.2%, also missing forecast. Private consumption provided modest support, offsetting weakness in exports and public spending. Now, the data comes as the Bank of Japan forecasts moderate growth ahead and as Tokyo works with Washington on a $550 billion investment pledge. Now, Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi has promised proactive fiscal support following her election victory, including record government spending and measures to ease cost of living pressures.
Lastly, Dowling, recap for us how we closed the markets on Friday and what has happened since those markets that have started trading started.
So U.S. stocks closed last week mixed, with the Nasdaq leading the losses down 0.2%. This as tech stocks continue to pull back. Investors on that front also assessing the latest U.S. inflation print. Local markets caught up in that somewhat downbeat sentiment as gold fell below $5,000 an ounce, weighing on the JSE, with the all-share closing 1.3% lower on Friday. That not really filtering through to the currency market, with the rand slightly stronger against global pairs at 50.93 to the dollar, 21.72 to the pound and 18.90 to the euro. Over in commodity markets, oil starting the week in the green, trading just above $66 a barrel. Lastly, in Asia, trade mixed. Investors on that front digesting Japan's latest growth figures. That economy, of course, barely growing, only up 0.1%.
All right, Dowling, thank you for that. That's the first update from Dowling. Look out for more insights from her. She'll be back at about 7:30 this morning.
Africa Update on SAFM.
And for that, we turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. We start with developments coming out of Addis Ababa, the annual gathering of heads of states in the Ethiopian capital. And the president of Burundi, President Evariste Ndayishimiye, is now the AU chairperson for the year ahead, yeah?
Refreshing morning, Thulas and Jumbo Africa. Today, Thulas, I call it a special report of the 13th AU summit that ended yesterday in Addis Ababa. And you are correct. Rotationally, you will understand, Thulas, coming from the south is going to the Great Lakes, to East Africa, more so Burundi taking over the chairpersonship from Angola. And the theme being at the glance, looking at water security as strategic issue that they should look into, Thulas. But also, you'll understand, Thulas, you don't only appoint the chair, you look at the bureau of the AU, and this bureau centered through Burundi, Ghana, Tanzania, and North Africa, as well as Angola being the rapporteur. Some of the key issues that came out, Thulas, in that meeting yesterday was to look at the peace and security report also of the AU. How are they dealing with matters of peace and security in the continent? The draft MOUs between the AU and what we call the RECs, the Regional Economic Communities, and now the regional mechanism on the utilization of African standby force. And finally, they received the G20 report from President Ramaphosa, who had to give the report. And I also saw the C5 on Sudan was also presented by President Ramaphosa on the South Sudan as well as Sudan, that was given by President Ramaphosa. As you know, that South Africa, through the Ministry of International Relations, is leading that process.
Also speaking at the AU summit has been the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. You'll forgive me, Sipho, if I'm cynical about this, because no matter how well-intentioned and how creatively and how forcefully people such as Antonio Guterres make the case and other leaders make the case, I simply doubt that we will ever see the reforms that we are crying for and clamoring for in the UN Security Council.
Indeed, Thulas, we might be skeptical, not optimistic about the UN General Secretary, because we have had the same script from the time of Boutros Ghali, came Kofi Annan, came Ban Ki-moon. I mean, they've been coming and going, Thulas, talking about the reform. Now, Antonio Guterres saying it's not 1946, we are in 2026. Let's push the reform. And particularly raising the issue of the continent, Thulas, that most of the a bag of work in the peace and security is in the continent. You look at the Sudans, you look at the DRC, you look at the Sahel, you look at Libya, the Horn of Africa. All these issues that Guterres was raising was that it also undermines the SDGs. How do we close that gap? The issue of debt servicing in the African continent. But as you have lamented, Thulas, Guterres went there to just raise these issues. He went on climate justice. He went on to raise this issue of the reform. He says whenever decisions about Africa and the world are on the table, Africa must also be at the table. We must not be the main own Thulas. We have to be there whenever there's a conflict or there's any crisis that faces the continent. It cannot be decided by only Washington or Geneva. And that's where the UN SG was just lamenting, saying, let's look back. It's no longer 1946, we are in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment about 2 years ago, and I think it's a year and a half ago, thereabouts, when the United States were among those countries that were saying, actually, it's time to tweak something. But we've since come a long way from then. We're really far from where we were in that fleeting moment of a possibility. Also coming out of Addis Ababa, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, was also there.
He was there, Thulas, and for the second time for the first time held in South Africa, but this is the second Africa-Italy summit. I think he took advantage of the AU summit and still continue with what you call the Matei plan. This Matei plan, Thulas, is all about the issues around investing in the continent, 14 African nations being targeted. She came with this in 2024, saying that they need to move from traditional aid of funding the continent, but to investment-led cooperation. He spoke about 100 projects in 14 countries targeting energy, infrastructure, agriculture, and digital development. Now you'll understand that this bridge of going to Addis was also to strengthen the relationship between Ethiopia and Italy, that we know it comes far to us. But there, Italy was there to pursue its foreign national interest by calling the second Africa-Italy summit.
All right, let's go to your historical archives, Sipho. 16 February 1962. What happened on this day?
Yeah, I think Zai will have missed this one, but I'm taking him head on again, Thulas, and others are saying our historical archive is politically grounded, but I'm always putting the soft power. Today we are celebrating the man who celebrated 64 years. He was an SABC broadcaster, a commentator. He got three times, Thulas. He was nominated and won the football player of the year. And we're talking about a player who started to earn 600 a month when he was only 19 years old, Thulas. He left the football team of Kaizer Chiefs when he scored 85 goals. We're talking about Max Maponyane. Come and go, Thulas. The man who played for Dynamos, played for Orlando Pirates. He won with Orlando Pirates the Africa Champions League in 1995 from Kaizer Chiefs, from Dynamos, Kaizer Chiefs, and went to Orlando Pirates. His international career in the national team, Thulas, you will recall that his last game was when he scored his second and his last goal on the 24th of November 1994 when we won over Ghana 2-1. And his last international was in 1995 when we won over Lesotho. So happy birthday to Max Maponyane. Come and go. The man who we know, Thulas, he has been very sharp even in his analysis on the soccer, even on the playground. He played with many players that I only recall one, James Kilam Konas. He said this is a player that they went to school together. They were in high school, and they all, 6 of them, went professional to different teams. Coming from same high school, born in Soweto, Midlands. So he's a man who is born in the ghetto in Soweto. Now today we are celebrating Come and Go Max Maponyane. Asante sana Thulas, still leading the conversation on SAFM.
Sipho, thank you for that, and happy birthday to Max Come and Go Maponyane, one of the best to have ever done it really in our country. Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update for this morning.
The Proteas women are pumped up to display top-class cricket and emphasize that they are unbreakable. However, the women in green are confident their presence will be felt. This is the one-day international encounter. Witness the first ODI between South Africa and Pakistan on Sunday, 22 February at 9:30 a.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC 3 with reports on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Gauteng Provincial Legislature is your provincial parliament, working daily to strengthen democracy and ensure that the voices of Gauteng's people are heard. As the lawmaking and oversight body of the province, the legislature holds government departments accountable, monitors service delivery, and promotes ethical, transparent governance that puts communities first. Through public participation programs, oversight visits, and platforms that bring citizens closer to decision-making, the legislature empowers residents to influence policies that affect their lives. By driving accountability, responsiveness, and openness, the GPL remains committed to building a government that delivers for all. The Gauteng Provincial Legislature. Your view, our vision.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Big interchanges around Joburg. Number one, the Diepkloof interchange. We often mention this because it's just a big volume of traffic. This morning, there are breakdowns and a little bit of a police operation as well. Got a breakdown as you come off the N12 Potch Highway at what they call Dead Men's Bend. That's the first breakdown. Another breakdown further up the N1, just past the Golden Highway exit, and one going into Diepkloof as well. So you've got those three obstructions, plus a little operation as you come out towards Southgate. So it's heavy. The traffic queues from the N12 Potch Highway after the Golden Highway exit all the way up through Diepkloof and down towards Uncle Charlie's. There is a bit of pressure on both the Golden Highway alternative route through Devlin and coming out of Lenasia, Nirvana Drive out towards Aikenoff, busy as well. When you get such a big jam on the N1, you get motorists scrambling for those alternative routes, and that sort of creates a couple of other backlogs locally as well. Two breakdowns going into Galuli's this morning, coming in from Ekurhuleni, N12 back to Craft Road, R24 back past the Edenvale exit. Both of those highways out of Ekurhuleni towards Galuli's are under some real pressure as well. N12 from Benoni through Boksburg, at least to about Atlas Road. That's looking quite heavy as well. And plenty of traffic coming in to Pretoria on the mighty Mopoli Highway from Brits Road all the way down to SKM Pathvalley. And once you get onto SKM Pathvalley, there's traffic light issues down there at Vanderhof. So some really heavy traffic coming in on SKM and on Vanderhof from Pretoria Gardens as well. Durban, traffic lights are short timing on the M7 at the N2. That's already pushing a queue back towards Queensborough if you're on your way towards the Bluff. We mentioned the N3 North looking heavy, getting through Spaghetti Junction. That's a crash this morning. We thought something was going on there. So from the M7 up through Spaghetti Junction into Westwood Mall, it's very heavy. Also, there's a breakdown on the N2 North before Gateway, so that's heavy from Kwamashu as well. And Cape Town, just a really heavy back to work on Monday. Give you an idea of how bad it is. The M3 already queuing back beyond Constantia, so that's an indication that it is pretty heavy. The N1 from Kryfontein busy now all the way through to Sable Road. Another indicator of the volume. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Proteas women are pumped up to display top-class cricket and emphasize that they are unbreakable. However, the women in green are confident their presence will be felt. This is the one-day international encounter. Witness the first ODI between South Africa and Pakistan on Sunday, 22 February at 9:30 a.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC3 with reports on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
7 minutes to 7. A new row has erupted between Abatembu King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo and Mvezo Chief Mandla Mandela. Speaking at an African Transformation Movement community development session, Dalindyebo has laid into Mandela, accusing him of disrespect and saying that he was stripping him of the chieftainship. At the heart of the feud are the two men's polar opposite views on the conflict in Gaza, with Mandela championing the cause of the Palestinians and speaking out against the genocide, while Dalindyebo has become an increasingly vocal supporter of Israel. Mandela was not the only chief to be told he was being stripped of chieftainship, with the Amakosi from Amaqia and Inkosi Vulituba Sangoni purportedly also removed by King Dalindyebo. But can he do that? Is that how these things work? Let's speak to Kgosi Lamek Mokoena, President of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Contralesa. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. Before we get to unpacking how these systems are meant to work, just your overall reaction as Contralesa as you've been watching this feud playing itself out between Nkosi Mandla Mandela and King Buyelekhaya Dalindyebo.
Morning, Nguni. Morning to SFM listeners. I must say, on behalf of Contralesa, I want to say this was really unfortunate. We didn't expect it to go this far. Because there are ways on how to resolve some of these issues. Among other things, we note what His Majesty said. And under normal circumstances, if His Majesty, if he felt the three traditional leaders wronged him, that he feels something must be done, normally he will summon them to the great place, then talk to them. And if they can't reconcile, it's only then something like this can happen. But unfortunately, culturally, and even now of late, in terms of our constitution, the Bill of Rights, in terms of the TKLA, you cannot just wake up one morning and say Unfortunately, this situation, we are so embarrassed about it.
Yeah, speak a bit more on that. The fusion between traditions and customs on the one hand, but also legislation and the constitution to try and have this eclectic mix that celebrates tradition, but at the same time upholds the constitutional standards. You allude to the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, but that works also in collaboration with traditions and practices of the various royal households, does it not?
A very good question, Mnguni. Our listeners will be very interested to hear this. A traditional leader is identified by a royal family. The royal family, after identifying this traditional leader, they will now make all the necessary recommendations to government, where the premier will issue a certificate of recognition. Now, it is that very royal family who can remove the very same person who has been identified. In a case where this traditional leader has wronged that royal family or wronged the community where the royal family felt is becoming a burden or an embarrassment, they are the ones who can recommend to the premier for that traditional leader to be removed. Unfortunately, in this case, it did not happen. And even then, there are processes that have to be followed. Then, if it is indeed you are found to have wronged the community or the royal family, even His Majesty, a king in a place where there is a king, there's a process that must be followed. So unfortunately, in this case, I don't know what happened. And even now, we'll call for calm as a contralesa, plead with His Majesty with all humility and respect that let's follow all the normal processes, because people are going to laugh at us, because such pronouncement, unfortunately, the Premier cannot just act on it without all necessary processes being followed and going.
Are you as Contralesa seeking to reach out and engage King Dalindyebo in the wake of his many grievances that he has aired over a period of time, including grievances against the foreign policy of the South African state, increasingly vocal support for Israel, but also increasingly critical of the national government? Have you sought to engage him to understand his grievances and perhaps to engage him on this particular feud that seems to have erupted between him and Inkosi Mandla Mandela?
Yes, Mnguni. We are, our General Secretary, Prince Zoane Mkiva, has been directed to link up with the affected traditional leadership to get exactly what happened before we can approach His Majesty. Because it would be embarrassing to go to His Majesty while we don't have all the facts at hand. And we want to assure South Africans that we're going to come into the space and make sure that this feud, this cacophonous halabaloo, is being dealt with nicely, in a very cultural way, while respecting His Majesty and so on. Also to call upon all the King's Council of His Majesty to please come into the space as well, because we don't want people to laugh at this institution simply because of what we are doing. If you remember, Mnguni, Contralesa supported His Majesty when he was attacked and lambasted by some politicians. We said, no, there's freedom of choice in this country, freedom of association. If His Majesty decided to have friends in Israel, I mean, that's not to happen. We said, as traditional leadership, our government is befriending people who don't like traditional leadership. But we don't make any noise about it. Even in this case, we're going to make sure that there is peace between this affected traditional leadership and His Majesty the King. Nguni.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. Jose Lamek Mukwena, President of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Contralesa. That brings us to 7 a.m. and standing by with your latest news is N. Musa.
Outsurance is in the business of saving you money on your car insurance premium. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
Thanks to us. In our top stories, female suspect in e-hailing driver murder to appear in court, and foot and mouth disease risk to Western Cape's livestock farming sector. Good morning. The woman arrested in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West is expected to appear in the Atteridgeville Magistrates Court today. She's facing charges including hijacking and murder. Police say the driver was overpowered inside his vehicle after picking up a man and a woman who had requested the ride last Wednesday. The hijacked vehicle and the driver's body were found in Atteridgeville on the same day. Gauteng police spokesperson Mavela Masondo says they expect to make more arrests soon.
The police in Gauteng have arrested a female suspect after an e-hailing driver was allegedly killed while inside the vehicle in Pretoria West on Wednesday, the 11th of February 2026. More arrests are imminent as police investigation is continuing. Preliminary investigation suggests that the victim was murdered by a male and a female who requested the service of an e-hailing in Pretoria West.
4 people accused of killing a circuit manager of the Limpopo Department of Education will appear in the Polokwane High Court today. Dr. Malekutu Mihlape was ambushed while asleep and shot multiple times at his home in Mankweng in December of 2023. His 28-year-old daughter, who hired the hitman, pleaded guilty to the murder in June last year. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. Her 4 co-accused, including her maternal aunt, are being prosecuted separately. The case was postponed in June last year to allow for a new judge to preside over the matter. The judge recused herself to ensure a fair trial. Kokecho Mutau reports.
The judge recused herself after sentencing Dr. Mihlapi's daughter Mologadi Mihlapi to life imprisonment. Her 4 co-accused Tshepo Noto, Hlologelo Mogotlane, Sello Molongwana and her maternal aunt Mahlodi Matole are facing charges of conspiracy to commit murder, robbery with aggravating circumstances and possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition. The court held that Mologadi Mihlapi orchestrated the murder following claims made by a traditional healer, Hlologelo Mogotlane, who allegedly told her that her father was responsible for her mother's death through the use of muti. When attempts to retaliate using traditional means failed, Mihlapi hired the killers, allegedly assisted by her aunt. The killers were paid 200,000 rand.
Former President Thabo Mbeki has filed papers in the High Court in Johannesburg to join former President Jacob Zuma's review application to challenge Justice Sisi Khampepe's refusal to recuse herself as chairperson of the TRC inquiry. Amongst reasons advanced, Mbeki says Khampepe applied a subjective, not an objective standard on the basis of bias. Mbeki also seeks an order that President Cyril Ramaphosa terminate Khampepe's appointment as well as declare all the Commission's decisions, proceedings and acts that involve her null and void. Authorities in the Western Cape say foot and mouth disease poses a major risk for the livestock farming sector in the province. About 15,000 people are employed in the 13.5 billion rand sector. A proactive risk mitigation vaccination program has taken place in the Western Cape to prevent the spread. Western Cape Premier Alan Winde.
So we've got to do risk mitigation. We've had a couple of outbreaks. We've zoomed in and dealt with those outbreaks. What we're doing is we're actually vaccinating this herd. This herd in Fasanta Kraal is a free-roaming herd. And of course, if they were infected, they could be the carrier. We've got a lot of other dairies in the region. We need to protect those dairies. So that's why we proactively. There's been no sign of any infection on any of these cows. The vets are checking. But at the same time as we're vaccinating them, we're taking blood to make sure to run those tests. Because if we pick it up, we come in and we quarantine.
Further field and finally heavy rains and high winds have triggered floods, mudslides and power outages on New Zealand's North Island. Wind gusts of almost 200 kilometers per hour hit parts of the capital, Wellington. Most flights from the city's international airport have been cancelled. Trains and ferries have been disrupted and many roads have been closed. More than 30,000 homes are without electricity. Recapping the top story, the woman arrested in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West is expected to appear in the Atteridgeville Magistrates Court today. She's facing charges including hijacking and murder. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
You could show your bank balance some love this month with awesome car insurance savings from Outsurance. Like 43-year-old Gloria, who saves an unbelievable 513 Rand on her 2024 Audi Q3. Get a quote now, and if Outsurance can't save you money, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Outsurance, licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, cricket action today. The Proteas women are eyeing a series sweep as the final T20 in Benoni kicks off at 6 p.m. And in soccer, Sekhukhune United climbing into the top 3 in the Betway Premiership. We'll have the details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, south of Joburg. Very heavy backlogs on the N1. This is the run into Diepkloof interchange coming in from Lenasia, Protea, Glen, Grasmere, Eldorado Park. It's all badly backed up. There are a couple of breakdowns plus a little police operation. The breakdowns before Diepkloof and the operation just through Diepkloof to Uncle Charlie's. The queue is heavy. It starts on the N12 Potch Highway down around the Golden Highway exit at Eldo. So major delays there if you're trying to get up through Diepkloof and down to Uncle Charlie's this morning. A couple of breakdowns as well. Getting into Galuli's N12 and R24 routes are heavy coming from Ekurhuleni in. The closer you get to the interchange from Craft Road or from the Edenvale exit on the R24, the heavier that traffic gets. Lights are down in Pretoria, Eske and Pethvalley at Vanderhof. Both of those routes are badly backed up. Durban, couple of breakdowns, one on the N2 going north. In fact, one is a crash, one is a breakdown. So the collision first up, just around Spaghetti Junction. The N2 north, heavy this morning from the M7, past that into the roadworks. And then you've got a breakdown before Gateway, so that's a second really big backlog. Lights are down, Kwamashu Highway at the N2, that is heavy. And traffic light short timing, M7 at the N2 if you're blockbound from Queens, but really bad traffic. Cape Town's busy everywhere. Give you an idea of how bad it is. The N1 from Kryfontein to Sable Road, M3 from beyond Constantia up towards Paradise Road, and the M5 this morning, chockers from about Southfield Parkwood all the way to Kuberg Interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 7. Welcome to it, the second hour of the morning brief on this Monday. It is great to be in your company. Among some of what we will tell you in this hour, we'll start off the hour in conversation with Mbegezeli Benjamin, the Research and Advocacy Officer of Judges Matter. We'll be talking about the solution that President Cyril Ramaphosa has advanced to try and unlock the logjams that occur in large infrastructure projects, simply because after the award of the tender for the construction or whatever it is carrying out of that project, almost invariably there's going to be some kind of litigation by the losing bidders. It has become so common practice that the losing bidder will most likely go to court, challenge one aspect or another. Well, the president is concerned that that is leading to a delay in large infrastructure projects. What's his solution? He has decided that there's going to be specialist courts that will be started up. These courts will have dedicated judges and courtrooms and a special court role that will deal with commercial disputes that have to do with those contracts to ensure that they expedite the resolution thereof, so that projects are not held in abeyance for a long period of time while people argue it out in the courts. So that's the solution he has put forward. But Mbegezeli Benjamin of Judges Matter is critical of that decision and that approach, and says basically that the whole plan by the president misses the point altogether. The point is the strain on the entirety of the judiciary, with the caseload, we are told, having increased a good 300% for the judges in this country since 2009. 300% increase in the workload, yet the number of judges has remained exactly the same for the last 16 years. Mbegezeli Benjamin is on standby to talk to me about that. And then immediately after speaking to Mbegezeli Benjamin, we'll be looking at the outcome from the Judicial Conduct Tribunal in the matter of the Eastern Cape Judge President Selbing Mbenenge. It seems to me that the debate is far from over as far as the outcome is concerned. So the JCT, Judicial Conduct Tribunal, found Judge Mbenenge guilty of misconduct, but not guilty of serious misconduct warranting impeachment, right? So that finding is now set to serve before the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission. And it seems to me as if the debate will carry on both sides of the argument, to the extent that you can talk about sides. But perhaps a better way of framing it is, what lessons have we learned about sexual harassment, power relations and dynamics in the workplace, issues of consent? What do we glean from that judgment, and how do we refine our understandings thereof, certainly as far as structures such as the judiciary are concerned? We'll speak to Professor Amanda House, who is South African Research Chair's Initiative Chair in Gender Politics at Stellenbosch University. Your calls 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes 0614 104 107. With that said, let's get into it. The second hour of the morning brief starts now.
The Blues are going all out for maximum points at Stamford Bridge.
Stevaus flipped it back to him. The Brazilian connection working nicely. João Pedro for two, and he's done it. The Blues Brazilians at the double here.
However, it is a must-win game for the Clarets to try to escape from the danger zone.
Deflected and in. Oh, Burnley lead. Sharp lead for the Clarets. Bashir Humphries will claim it. It's got a deflection, and Burnley have got an early lead here.
This is the Premier League. Chelsea FC versus Burnley FC, the Saturday 21 February at 4:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC 3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Wait till you hear how much money OUTsurance saves 30-year-old Dineo on her car insurance.
I'm saving 1,094 rands.
That's an incredible monthly saving of 1,094 rand on Dineo's 2025 Kia Sonet. SMS out to 30754. Here's 63-year-old Almero.
We do save 417 Rand. That's about 5,000 Rand a year.
That's an awesome saving on Almero's 2021 Ford Ranger. Get a quote now. SMS out to 30754. With OUTsurance, after 3 claim-free years, you get an out bonus.
Can't wait for that. A little bit of cash for a girl to have a little bit of fun, eh?
Always getting something out. You also get 5 million Rand third-party liability cover, covering damage to the other person's vehicle in an accident. How much could OUTsurance save you? Get a quote now. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer in FSP. TCs and information online.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
14 minutes after 7. An opinion piece on Daily Maverick argues that President Cyril Ramaphosa's proposed fix for court delays may sound decisive, but misses the real crisis facing the country's judiciary. Writing for Judges Matter, Mbegezeli Benjamin says the plan to create specialized courts for big infrastructure tender disputes treats a symptom, not the disease. He argues that the deeper problem is a chronic shortage of judges, courts, and support staff after more than a decade of rising caseloads with virtually no growth in judicial capacity. Mbegezeli Benjamin, Research and Advocacy Officer of Judges Matter, joins me now to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, Mbegezeli, and thank you for your time. That proposal of a specialized court for commercial disputes, particularly those that have to do with large infrastructure projects and tender disputes, it jumped out at me when President Ramaphosa delivered it during the SONA. On the face of it, is it a good decision?
Good morning, Thulas, and good morning to the listeners. Well, I think if the president is thinking that we need more judges and more courts, that is a good idea. But I don't think it's a good idea for us to create another specialist court when the mainstream courts are suffering. As you correctly point out, the caseload in Johannesburg over the last 15 years has increased more than 300%, but the judges have increased by 0%. And so the president should focus more on increasing the number of judges, because that will have a greater impact than having a specialist court, which might actually lie idle at some point, because these kinds of cases take a long time to go through the court system. And so while they're going through the court system, the judges will essentially be waiting and doing nothing. So it's better to increase the number in the mainstream courts, like the High Court in Johannesburg and Pretoria, rather than to create yet another specialist court.
In fact, there's a phrase that you use in your piece there. You're saying that it's akin to rearranging the decks, yet the Titanic is sinking. Explain to me why you'd use that analogy. What does the system look like in 2026?
Well, look, Thulas, in 2009, South Africa had 250 judges. In 2026, South Africa still has 250 judges. So the Titanic we're speaking about is a judiciary that is under enormous strain, because even while the number of judges has remained the same, the caseload has not. Like I said, in Johannesburg alone, it has increased by more than 300%. What this translates to is that for you to get a trial date, things have slightly improved now, but at some point last year, for you to get a trial date, you needed to wait 6 years for you to get your day in court. And that, unfortunately, is a huge crisis, and it needs serious attention. So the problem then is, instead of you creating yet another specialist court without increasing the general pool, is that you are not addressing the core cause of what the problem is. You are simply addressing the symptoms. So essentially rearranging the deck chairs while the Titanic is sinking.
Wasn't this whole issue meant to have been addressed a couple of years ago, Mbegazeli? What was the work then that was being done by the former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke with the work that he was doing? I think it was 2021 or thereabouts.
Yes, so former Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke led a committee that looked at right-sizing the judiciary. So how many more courts do we need? How many more judges do we need? They even came out with a proposal, for example, of moving the High Court in Makhanda to Bisho. That was one of their controversial proposals. But another important proposal that they made was that the judiciary needs a minimum of a 20% increase in the number of judges. The priority should be the High Court in Gauteng and the High Court in Limpopo, both Polokwane and Thohoyandou, because those are the courts that are facing the highest amount of pressure. The initial report, the interim report, came out in 2024, and the final report came out in 2025. We haven't really heard anything from the National Treasury, from the presidency, on what they are actually doing to implement that Moseneke report, because that was speaking exactly to the crisis that we have identified, that we just don't have enough number of judges and magistrates for that matter. And so I think the energy that the president is bringing in this is good, but it looks like it is being spent in the wrong places. It should be spent on increasing the general pool of judges and not creating another specialist court.
But is the solution, though, Mbegazeli, is that the solution, increasing the number of judges and courts, as opposed to finding efficiencies in the courts that already exist? So, I don't know, perhaps ideas I've heard include increasing the jurisdictions, for example, of the regional courts, such that they're able to handle cases that perhaps could have gone to the High Court, now can go to the regional court and be adjudicated there. Issues to do with arbitration before you lodge. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, do we not run the risk of increasing the capacity consistently, whereas the situation, the real problem we're dealing with is a society that's becoming even more litigious, such that we will never have enough judges, enough courtrooms, enough court rolls, and perhaps we should be seeking creative and more efficient ways to address that issue?
Well, a lot of the proposals you speak about, Thulas, have already been tried. The regional court in 2010 didn't really deal with as much civil litigation as it does now, so it does a whole lot more than it did, including on criminal cases. Almost all of the rape and murder cases go to the regional courts today than they did 15 years ago. And so the proposals really have been tried. And again, the idea of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic is also in that regard, because what we've done is we've sort of left it to the judiciary to make a plan with the bringing resources. Once you consistently see, again, looking at Johannesburg, every single term at the beginning of the term, the judges would take long leave. Why? Because they are burning out, permanent judges. The second thing that you see is you use an enormous amount of acting judges. In every term, you need a minimum of 20 acting judges in Johannesburg. Why? Because the workload is too much. If you didn't recruit that many acting judges in any one term, the court will come to a standstill. So the alternatives have been tried, but it is now reached a point where we do need to increase the capacity. And if you look only at the population of Gauteng, in the last 15 years, it has increased more than 50%. So surely, the courts also need a concomitant increase so that they keep up with the economy, with the population sizes, because what you are currently seeing is that we are seeing a crisis.
All right, very quickly, talk to the solutions, the alternatives that you believe the president should have looked at instead of introducing yet another specialist court.
So what we need is essentially a virtual court. You increase the full capacity across the country, and you have a court where, for example, the judge president sits in Gauteng, and every term they will roster judges from all over the country in order to sit and adjudicate some of these procurement disputes. That is a more efficient way, because in any one term, a judge can come from the Eastern Cape, from KZN, from the Northern Cape, from the Western Cape, and you can utilize them efficiently. And if the pipeline of cases is not keeping up with the judicial capacity, then those judges return back to their court and they are still able to be effective. Because we do, for example, have a special tribunal at the moment. The special tribunal does have judges designated, but they are underutilized because the pipeline of cases is not enough. And so we need to stop thinking specialist court and think about capacitating the mainstream court in a way that actually deals with the problem that we want to solve.
All right. Gotcha. Mbegazeli, thank you for that. Mbegazeli Benjamin, Research and Advocacy Officer of Judges Matter.
So you thought you were building a business in this economy, but day by day, somehow it grew. You kept going when the freezer didn't freeze, the bucket didn't budge, and the bank balance barely blinked. So you thought you were building a business. You weren't. It was building you. Because this isn't just what you do anymore. It's who you are. And you don't trust just anybody to protect it. Chat to your broker about Old Mutual Insure Business Insurance. Protect what built you. Old Mutual Insure Limited is a licensed FSP and non-life insurer.
When music meets nature, something unforgettable happens. Symphony by the Water, a world-class live music experience set against the breathtaking beauty of Midmar Dam, featuring the KZN Philharmonic Orchestra, Spogazi, the Black Lapels, Saturday, the 7th of March, 2026. Day tickets from $150, evening tickets from $350. Tickets available at WebTicket and Pick and Pay. Symphony by the Waters, where sound flows. Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, in fact, let's take quick reaction. We're battling to get a hold of our second guest for this half hour. And we will see if we can make time and connect with Professor Amanda Gous and see if we can make time and connect on that issue coming out of the Judicial Conduct Tribunal. But there's enough of your reaction for us to take and take in particular on issues that we've covered already. My conversation, for example, with Mbegezeli Benjamin has gotten a lot of you thinking this morning.
Good day, 702. It's Nino from Tembisa. They can increase the judges and do that. But the only thing that is killing the justice system is how they operate. You find that someone who's got bail is getting a bail. Do they need to fix that thing instead of increasing the judges and all that stuff? I don't see that helping anywhere in our country. Thank you.
Morning, Thulasizwe Simelane. If I am to go with analogy of will I be correct if I said that South Africa needs to build more jails, needs to build more correctional centers in order to deal with overcrowding cells? That's Hamilton. Have a good morning, Thulasizwe.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. The population is growing naturally. The population is growing and the workload has been increasing. So a progressive increasing of capacity in all these systems, be it education, in health, there's no harm in doing that. But as you heard, I was putting to Mbegezeli to say, are there no other ways to find efficiencies? For example, this insistence that people, before they lodge high court, action or motion proceedings, actually they should try the route of arbitration, work arbitration into your agreements, into your contracts, such that actually you agree between the two of you that if we have a dispute, we're not waiving the right to go to court, but we are saying that, the first route will be let's go to arbitration and both of us will respect the outcome. But Mbegezeli is saying that despite all of those having been tried, there's still need to increase the capacity, and in fact alludes to the work done by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke in 2021, which recommended a 20% increase in judges nationwide, because it really is frustrating for those people who are seeking justice to be told that the earliest you can be heard by a court to determine your rights is 2032. And you're sitting in 2026 now, 2033, by which time, it won't matter at all. Let me take a few of your other voice notes. This one has to do with King Buyelekaya Dalindyebo and what he has said about Inkosi Mandla Mandela.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Uthembi Nkosi lo phansi eThekwini. You see what Dalindyebo is doing? He's going to start a war in South Africa. Within 2030, there'll be something happening, because now they are dividing us. On the other side, we are with the communists. On the other side, they are with the capitalists. So it's just that there's going to be a huge problem. And the problem is the civilians are the ones that are going to be caught up while these guys are busy sitting at home drinking coffee.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And he has been framing it along those lines. I do hope that it doesn't escalate to the levels about which you are concerned, to the point of, causing conflict among people in South Africa. But he has been framing it that way, to say, for the longest time we were looking east, and now I'm looking to the west, says King Dalindyebo, firmly aligning himself with Israel and the West, and basically saying that is his attitude. And he uses colorful language to say, I don't care about your government's foreign policy. This is me, and also frames it along religious understandings of these matters. So it has become really, really complex. And I guess the real conversation for me is what it all does to the institution of traditional leadership, an institution that our forebears and the founders and the framers of the Constitution thought so important to the restoration of the dignity of Africans, that they worked it into our governance system and ensured that, traditional leadership will always have a place in how this country is governed, the laws, customary law and the likes. When you see this friction that's playing itself out, what are its implications for traditional leadership? That, for me, is a more pressing, debate, given the status and standing of traditional leadership in our scheme of governance in the country. 7:30. Let's go straight to N. Musa, standing by with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the Matlanga Commission of Inquiry will resume this morning with the testimony of a witness known only as Witness F. The Commission is probing allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice that were made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, in July last year. The woman arrested in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West is expected to appear in the Atteridgeville Magistrates Court today. She is facing charges including hijacking and murder. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has demanded the removal of all enriched uranium from Iran as part of any deal on Tehran's nuclear program. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy coming into Joburg from the south. If you're in from Protea Glendale, Asia, major delays coming out the N1. There are multiple breakdowns going into Deep Cliff Interchange. The traffic's all the way back to the N12 Potch Highway and looking particularly heavy. Crash on the Mike 1 South before Caller Drive. Heavy coming through from Woodmead on your way down to Joburg, and a couple of breakdowns at Galulis, mean the N12 and R24 it's under pressure today. Durban side, the N3 out to Pinetown, gliding off at Paradise Valley. Roadworks there causing quite a big delay. That could be an all-day delay. Breakdown before Gateway, the N2 North is heavy from Kumashu, and traffic lights down on the Kumashu Highway coming out of Kumashu very slow this morning. Cape Town, it is a busy back to work Monday. M5 at Southfield to Maitland, N2 backing up passing Khayelitsha. There's big traffic on the N1 from Kraaifontein all the way through to the Coburg interchange, and even Baden-Powell joining in with delays between Mitchell's Plain and Coastal Park. Very busy on your way to Muizenberg this morning. And Rivergate exiting Tableview Parklands, Malabongwe, well, that's almost back to Sandown Road as you wait to get to the N7 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. Let's talk Proteas women, and you're saying that they've swept against Pakistan, and the T20 International is also beckoning in Benoni.
Yeah, Thulas, if you're anywhere near Benoni at 6, that's your after work sorted. That's your plan, because we'll see Proteas women chasing the sweep against Pakistan. So it's wonderful to see how we've secured the series. We're not patting ourselves on the back just yet. Despite the win, there's still a strong internal focus on sharpening execution, raising our standards from game 1 to game 2. Now we've got the all-rounder for the Proteas, Nadine de Klerk, saying that signs are there, but they definitely want to show clear improvement.
I think sometimes you have to give credit to batters as well. Batters are allowed to play good shots and bat well, and I think Fatima batted really well. So I think we have to give credit to her as well, but probably again also didn't execute the way we wanted to. I think we came obviously here with different plans, and even though we won the game, we had a few tough conversations, and we knew that we want to be better. And I think to rock up here, and again I think we had them quite a few wickets down early on, but this time we closed it off much better. So I think it's just about executing on the day, and we also know that, like I said, cricket is a funny game. You're not always going to rock up and execute, but it's about learning from those games and then coming back the next one and try and be better, and we were much better in the second game.
The first ball being bowled around 6 p.m. You can catch it live on SABC Sport. Let's go to soccer. Sekhukhune United climbing to third in the Betway Premiership after a convincing 2-0 win over Orbit College at the Peter Mokaba Stadium. This is Babina Noko's 9th win of the season, leapfrogging both Amazulu and Kaizer Chiefs on the log. For Orbit College, it was a 7th defeat in 8 matches. They remain second from the bottom and winless since November. In England, Arsenal kept their quadruple dream alive, cruising into the FA Cup 5th round with a dominant 4-0 win over Wigan. 4 goals inside the opening half hour at the Emirates did the damage, with Gabriel Jesus on target as Mikel Arteta's side book their place in the last 16 for the first time since lifting the trophy, and that was back in 2020. Rugby news: France kept their Grand Slam hopes alive with a 54-12 victory over Wales in Cardiff as their Six Nations title defence rolled on in style. And that's your sport on the morning brief. We'll tackle more. That's at the top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
All right, battling a little bit to connect with Ndauleng Lichela for an update this morning. Let's see what we can do to try and connect. Just a bit of difficulty with the lines this morning, and it all has to do with connectivity one way or another. These are issues you would not think would be grappling with in 2026, yet here we are. But I do have time to take one or two of your other voice notes, though, in the meantime, while we try and sort that out. Let me take this one that has to do with King Buyelekaya Dalindyebo.
Good morning, Thulasizwe.
No, I think we played that one, Tim, because thank you for that. I think we did play it. Let me play this one that has to do with former President Jacob Zuma, the president of the MK party, and some of what was reported by Melissa a bit earlier on in the morning brief about him saying that he will fight tooth and nail to regain his ANC membership.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. I just want to give a commentary or share my thoughts with regards to Ubaba Jacob Zuma, claiming that he's still a member of our ruling party, the African National Congress. Thulasizwe, it is as clear as day that that man doesn't know what he's doing, doesn't know where he's going in life anymore, because his membership has expired. He's an expelled member of the African National Congress. He's not a suspended member. He can't even renew his membership, so he doesn't have a place in the ANC. You cannot throw away your trash at your house outside the bin and then expect to go back to the bin and bring the trash back into your bin. We have chased him away. He's trash. He's nothing to us in the African National Congress. He has no name in the African National Congress. Daniel here in Bryanston.
Yo, Daniel, I'm laughing at how you got into it, man. I'm laughing at how you got into it. Just really, really got into it, the spirit, and just picked up, and you can tell that, you know, he's really invested in the issue. Is Daniel there? Daniel, there are a lot of difficulties. His membership having expired, I don't know if that on its own answers the question, because many people who are ANC members have their membership expired. Remember that system where, you know, you have members who've not necessarily renewed but remain members. Then you have those who are on probation and are undergoing that kind of training before they are inducted into the ANC. Hence, the reason why you saw the ANC reporting a lower figure in terms of its membership, because they were saying that, you know, there are members in good standing, members not in good standing. Then you have those people who are on probation. That's the one element. As for everything else and the names you are calling him, I'd rather you are not calling him names, but I get the point you are making that he has no place, no standing in the ANC. You don't need him in the ANC. He says he will fight, though. So let's see how that fight goes.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's turn to Ndauleng Lichela. Hey, Sada Saktola, where's this? Hey, we struggled. Yay! Anyway.
Hi. Anyway, I will not comment.
Slapanguku. Tell me about Warner Bros. Discovery and the board there is weighing in. There's an improved offer from Paramount, is there? Mm-hmm.
That's right, Tulas. You know, when we thought that that bidding war is over, it seems like Paramount has a new bid. And this is according to Bloomberg. This time around, the company's board is weighing whether to reopen those talks with Paramount after receiving that revised offer just weeks after agreeing to sell its studio and HBO Max business to Netflix. Now, Warner had accepted Netflix's $27.75 a share offer in December, but Paramount then launched a hostile bid at $30 a share in cash and has now sweetened the proposal. Now, the latest move includes a ticking fee of 25 cents per share for every quarter the deal is delayed beyond the end of 2026. Now, Paramount has also offered a cover, or rather to cover the $2.8 billion breakup fee payable to Netflix and to absorb $1.5 billion in refinancing costs. So yeah, that's a sweet deal when looking at what Netflix is offering. Both Netflix and Paramount have indicated they could improve their offers, but this is the first sign that Warner Bros.'s board may be open to reconsidering its options. Of course, if those talks are revived, it could trigger a bidding war for one of Hollywood's most valuable content libraries.
Yeah, must be nice being Warner Bros. Discovery.
They're sitting back, relaxing.
Yeah, sitting there. You fight it out. Let's see. We'll go with the best offer in the end. Foot and mouth disease continues to be a serious concern for the South African beef market. And now Zambia is taking some steps.
That's right, Thulas. The outbreak has prompted Zambia to suspend livestock imports from SA with immediate effect. Zambian authorities say no cattle, sheep, goats, or pigs will be allowed in for now. The ban also extends to animal feed, hides, skins, and certain dairy products. Now, previously issued permits have also been withdrawn. The move is aimed at protecting Zambia's livestock sector as we deal with one of the most serious outbreaks in years. President Ramaphosa has declared, of course, the outbreak state of disaster to help contain the spread. The outbreak has already weighed on the beef industry, with exports declining last year after key markets, including China, imposed restrictions. In response, government has launched a large-scale vaccination drive targeting 80% of the country's 12 million cattle herd.
All right, lastly, Ndauling, how are the markets looking at this hour?
Starting in Asia, trade is thin due to public holidays in China and South Korea. And so focus is on Japan after that economy narrowly avoided a technical recession. GDP on that front expanding 0.1% in the fourth quarter of 2025, and the Japanese Nikkei ticking in the green on the back of that print. Volumes will also be muted over on Wall Street, with markets closed for President's Day. Futures in the meantime in positive territory. Bringing it back home, stocks closed last week in the red, with the Resi 10 under pressure due to gold pulling back and trading below $5,000 an ounce. That leading to a 1.3% decline in the all share. Currencies, however, starting the day firmer at 15.73 to the dollar, still at 21.72 to the pound, and at 18.89 to the euro. And then lastly, in commodities, oil remains range bound, with, of course, trade being limited today. It's at $66 a barrel.
All right, Ndauling, thank you for that. Zoktola next hour. Or is it a toss-up? We might not find you. Eh? You and your
Don't put the negative energy out.
You and your cell phone tower issues. All right, Ndauling, we'll talk in the third hour, just after 8:30.
Welcome to it. This is season 1 of Playlist happening right here at Maloka, and believe me, it's a party.
Set your reminder every Friday, 9 p.m. Playlist at Maloka is in the building.
Eskom is upgrading old electricity meters with modern smart meters, giving you clarity, control, and confidence. With your new meter, you'll be able to see your usage in real time, giving you the power to manage your electricity with ease. Smart meters are accurate and help Eskom respond faster to issues. Please allow their authorized installers access to install your new meter. For more information, visit the Eskom website. Eskom, redefining for a better future.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SFM Radio.
16 minutes to 8. Let's return to that conversation earlier on that we tried to bring to you with Professor Amanda Gous. An opinion piece by Professor Amanda Gous appearing in the Sunday Times, sharply questioning what the country's judiciary understands about sexual harassment, power and consent. Writing for the paper, political scientist Professor Amanda Gous argues that the Judicial Conduct Tribunal's finding against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge reflects a dangerous misreading of the law. She says the tribunal acknowledged misconduct but stopped short of recognizing sexual harassment, treating the parties as equals and ignoring the profound power imbalance between a judge president and a judge's secretary. Professor Amanda Gous joins us now to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time. What about the finding of the Judicial Conduct Tribunal of some misconduct, but not serious misconduct has to become impeachable? What about it evinces a failure to distinguish between substantive equality and formal equality?
Good morning, Thulas, and thanks for having me. I listen to you every morning, so it's nice to be on your show. So if you work with sexual harassment, the one thing that's always that we look at is, was there a power imbalance between the two parties? Was somebody in the position of power and authority, and to exercise that power over someone whose probably career depends on whether this person, you comply with the person's wishes. And now if we look at the findings of the tribunal, there are different categories. Category A finding is that it's a lesser misconduct. B is misconduct but not impeachable misconduct. And the third one is then misconduct that can lead to impeachment. So Judge Mbenenge was found guilty of B, it is misconduct, but it's not impeachable. And the issue here is that how the findings of that tribunal reflects on Ms. Mengo is that, she is not reliable. She is not speaking the truth. And it starts with this problem that we all have. The starting point is that women lie. You must make first sure that they don't lie before you continue. And then she did have some evidence that wasn't quite truthful. But the point is that if you look at the victim's behavior, it is very typical of somebody who are being sexually harassed. Because if you're in a position of power, you're going to first try to play along, then you're going to try and sidestep, and in the last instance, you're going to do something, and you will probably ask to be transferred somewhere else, as we've seen has happened now, or you will, so in the last instance, report this case, and you know this is going to come with a heavy cost to yourself and probably to the other party.
So, Prof, isn't it that those issues were grappled with in the judgment? The whole issue of whether or not there was this power imbalance, the evidence of Professor Lisa Vetten, for example, being weighed up about the imbalances and inequalities. And even in that analysis, the Judicial Conduct Tribunal coming to the conclusion that much of the communication showcased two willing participants in this inappropriate relationship in the workplace, but, flirtation and some of these really suggestive sexual messages were coming from both ends. Isn't that where the difficulty is, that the lines seem to have been blurred?
Yes, indeed. And I have looked at on TV at this case, and at one point Lisa Vetten was also, sort of told that she's out of her depth, which I think is already a problem with attacking the credibility of witnesses like Lisa Vetten. The point here is it's about consent, right? So consent is always very difficult to establish in these types of cases because lines are blurred. And why the lines are blurred is because, like I said in the beginning, somebody will play along. And I think here is also a cultural issue, right? Because the judge, and we call it the cultural defense, is that, I'm a proud Xhosa man, and if a woman behaves in a certain way, it indicates interest in sex. So maybe that was where it started, and he initiated it. But down the line, she became very uncomfortable with what was happening, and this is always the problem. It's very difficult to then go back on what's happened because it's sort of already established a line of action. But the fact that she became uncomfortable and then reported it shows that she was never really a willing participant. In the beginning, maybe she was flattered. And I mean, this is the thing about power relationships. If you work with someone and you really admire their person, and all of a sudden this person shows an interest in you, you feel really flattered, and you see it as a compliment. Yeah. And then, of course, things get out of hand along the way.
Because I know our community, Prof, let me ask you this question. It's more of a devil's advocate question more than anything else. Someone listening who's perhaps a reductionist in their approach, for them things are binary. It's either this or that, might be saying that the analysis and critique that you give suggests that the only time justice would have been done would have been for Justice Mbenenge to have been found guilty of the gross misconduct leading to his impeachment. That's not what you're suggesting, is it?
Well, I think what I'm suggesting is that sexual harassment has to be taken very seriously, and I'm questioning the fact that the courts are the last stop where legislation on sexual harassment is implemented. If a judge is so ignorant about what is ethical relationships in a workplace, because this is also part of ethics, then it reflects very badly on the judicial system. And it was only last year that Judge Mandisa Maya wrote a policy on sexual harassment for the court system. And, I mean, when we've had labor legislation and equality legislation that actually indicate that companies and organizations have to have sexual harassment policies. I mean, we at the university had to write a sexual harassment policy. I wrote that policy many years ago. The point is, so it's also about that type of power, the power to implement, the power to know the law, and then the judge seems to be completely ignorant of this.
All right. Thank you for raising these conversations. You've gotten us thinking and talking about it. That's Professor Amanda Gous, who is a South African Research Chair's Initiative Chair in Gender Politics at Stellenbosch University.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A busy Monday across the board, as you might be expecting. We are back to work in a big way these days. There's a lot of pressure coming in from the south side of Joburg on that N1 running north. This is for motorists coming in from Eldorado Park and Grasmere, Lenasia. The run up into Diepkloof interchange, that's eased quite nicely. But ahead of that, if you're not going to Uncle Charlie's, but going up through to Randburg, there's a really big backlog of traffic passing Soweto this morning on your way through to Gordon Road. After that, a little gap, but then you're back in the thick of it from Beyers-Naudé right round to Rivonia Road. Mike 1 from the N1 South, sort of Allendale territory, right down to Corlett Drive. A lot of traffic on that run today. The N3 is backed up heavily as well, coming from Elands interchange all the way through to Modderfontein Road in Edenvale. The run up through Galulis this morning, really jam-packed. There is a breakdown around the Heldenace interchange, which isn't helping. N12 and R24 routes coming in remain heavily backed up as well. A crash as you come off the N12 and R24 onto that sort of flyover at Galuli. So in from the airport or in from Boksburg, it's very slow. N14, the Krugersdorp Highway, bad backlogs. Traffic sitting from the R55 Pretoria West exit all the way through to the Bruckfontein interchange area. Durban, a lot of congestion around Spaghetti Junction this morning. A crash going out of town between Spaghetti Junction and Pavilion. Slow going in towards Sherwood. And just off the N3, the M13 around 45th cutting. There's terrific amount of traffic pressure there as well today. Pietermaritzburg side on your way up from Ashburton, Linfield Park. A breakdown. Oh, in fact, it's a crash north at Ashburton. So that's why the traffic marching back towards Linfield Park area. And Cape Town generally busy all over this morning. The N3, or the M3 at least, from Constantia queues all the way up towards UCT. And there's some real pressure on the Baden-Powell Bridge over the N2 highway. And getting off the highway outbound, very heavy congestion from Khayelitsha N2 sort of direction Somerset West, lining up to get off at Baden-Powell. And traffic lights to fold the N2 Victoria Street. So heavy right in the heart of Somerset West. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? With Specsavers buy one, get one offer, you get great value for money. Get a free pair of branded single vision prescription sunglasses up to 3,300 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye examination and spectacle frames with lenses on your first pair. The best part? Choose from top brands like Police, Hugo, Under Armour, Tommy Hilfiger, Red Bull Spect, and more. Affordable eye care? Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
Catch the season premiere of Color Your Plate this Sunday evening at 7 as 4 hungry home cooks step into the kitchen to reimagine beloved family favorites in bold and unexpected ways. With the return of a Sterling from a previous season judging their every move, only one will earn the chance to progress and cook alongside them in the next round. Who will impress and take the first step forward? Find out on Color Your Plate, Sundays at 7 p.m, repeat Saturdays at 4:30, only on SABC2.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's go to your calls. Let me start with Peggy in Mbombela. Good morning to you, Peggy.
Tulas, good morning. How are you?
Very well. How are you? Please go ahead.
Oh, very good. There is this gentleman called Karl Marx.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you speak about law, you must know that you can't divorce it from the scientific theory.
Mm-hmm. Peggy? Peggy, do we still have you? Ah, no ways. Oh, no, man. I can't believe that happened. He had laid it up nicely. When you talk about the law, you can't divorce it from scientific theory. And then the lines went dead. Let's see if we can get Peggy back. But I think to stay on theme, let me play this voice note while we try and dial Peggy back. This is about the critique and analysis of the Judicial Conduct Tribunal's finding in the Judge Selbin Benenge matter.
Morning, Thulas. It's Vugan from Durban. I hope that Professor House, when she comes in to discuss the Benenge case, she balances it with the weaponization of rape by some women. I've seen many cases where men have been falsely accused of rape. Afterwards, women confess that was false. So I hope that she balances that when she makes her arguments. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Peggy is back on the line. Peggy, good morning.
Good morning, Tulas. I just want to say that, you know, Tulas, men are being just held at ransom because any case has to be proven between both parties. And you know they're saying, because you are a lawyer, the Alteram Patam rule. When Judge Benenge brought his case, after a complaint has been laid, he opened the eyes of most of us. And big ups to his legal team, particularly Ubabus Kakani. The questions that he asked opened the eyes. The way they articulated themselves, they were objective and very confident. But there were so much loopholes and distortion when you listen to Uman Mango, taking nothing away from her. But if she was definitely sexually harassed, as one would have suggested, there was going to be a better version of understanding of the tribunal. But in closure, I just want to say that I respect Judge Benenge, and I go through that judgment every single weekend because there's a lot to learn. I even sent that to you, Thulas, so that you can make it your trademark. Yeah. I'm telling you, there's a lot to learn. I thank you so much.
Peggy, before you go, is there something to be said, though, while you have to present the other side, your defense, with the vigor, that speaks to the seriousness and the gravity of the charges being leveled, that perhaps in the critique, it comes forth as attacking the character of the accuser. I see that Professor Gous, for example, harks back to how the defense in the Jacob Zuma matter many years ago was conducted. So is there no balance there that says, I will put my case across vigorously without affronting the character of the accuser?
That goes back to punctuality and fairness. When you deal with issues of this magnitude to us, you must take emotions away. You must never have an oversight of how to deal with things. People become too personal in a way that they look at positions and don't look at the facts of the matter, what transpired. That is why I say this judgment opened our eyes in one way or the other. I've got no other ways to say that we need Judge Benenge, and we need such people who are so sharp, who are open-minded, and who are able to articulate themselves in a way that they even educate or litigate in this matter and teaches their opponents how things are done. Big ups to them and Skakane. I thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
I hope I answered your question.
That's big. You did. That's big in Bombela. I've got to go straight to N Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance is in the business of saving you money on your car insurance premium. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
Thanks to us. In our top stories, more arrests in Uber driver murder and witness F to resume testimony at the Matlanga Commission. Good morning. Gauteng police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria a week ago. They will join a female suspect who was arrested on Friday. Police say preliminary investigations suggest the victim was murdered allegedly by a man and a woman who had requested an e-hailing ride last Wednesday. They say the hijacked vehicle and the driver's body were later found in Attridgeville. Gauteng Provincial Police spokesperson Mavela Masondo says the 3 suspects will appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges of hijacking and murder.
2 male suspects who are aged 30 and 26 will join the third suspect aged 25 who was arrested on Friday the 13th of February. All 3 suspects are expected to appear before Pretoria Magistrates Courts on Monday the 16th of February, facing charges that include car hijacking and murder. Police are on a lookout for the 4th suspect.
The Matlanga Commission of Inquiry will resume this morning with the testimony of a witness known only as Witness F. The Commission is probing allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system made by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi in July last year. Last week, Witness F withdrew his urgent High Court bid to block his appearance before the Commission and to interdict the further display of his WhatsApp messages before the inquiry. Sibahle Mota reports.
Witness F, who operated as a middleman between suspended National Deputy Police Commissioner General Shadrack Sibiya and attempted murder accused Vusmuzi Ket Matlala, made several revelations before the Matlanga Commission. He testified about how Matlala gifted General Sibiya with impales. He also revealed how he and the late taxi boss, Mswazi Msibi, referred to Sibiya as number 1. The commission begins at 9:30 a.m. at the Bridget Mabantla Justice College.
The Limpopo Department of Transport says scholar transport operators will be given 60 days starting today to finalize their operating documentation. The department says during this period, unroadworthy vehicles, operators without proof of agreements with parents, as well as bakkies and trucks used to transport learners will be impounded. Department spokesperson Chifiwa Dali has urged operators to familiarize themselves with the process of applying for scholar transport permits. Free State Agriculture says it's irresponsible for farmers not to declare or report suspected foot and mouth disease cases. The organization's Giacomo says early reporting might be challenging for feedlots or large-scale farmers. He says this undermines effective planning for the vaccination campaign, increasing the risk of further transmission.
So there are cases where the farmers might have missed it, but there might also be cases where the farmers blatantly didn't report. Our position all along has been that farmers have to report as soon as they can by law. Legally, if you have a notifiable animal disease, you have to report it as quickly as possible. And then if a farmer doesn't report, besides getting sicker himself, his herd getting sicker himself, he's also then shedding a lot more virus in his herd that can get to the neighboring herds and infect a whole area. So we need to mobilize as quickly as possible.
And finally, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has demanded the removal of all enriched uranium from Iran as part of any deal on Tehran's nuclear program. This after Iran's foreign minister departed for Geneva yesterday, ahead of a second round of talks with the United States over Tehran's nuclear program. Speaking at the annual conference of presidents of major American Jewish organizations, Netanyahu said Iran should also not be allowed to enrich any more uranium.
There shall be no enrichment capability, not stopping the enrichment process, but dismantle the equipment and the infrastructure that allows you to enrich in the first place.
Recapping the top story, Gauteng police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West a week ago. They will join a female suspect who was arrested on Friday. For SAFM News, I'm Anne Musa.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
In the month of secret admirers, it's no secret that Outsurance could save you money on your car insurance. Like 32-year-old Parushka, who saves a whopping 729 Rand on her 2020 Haval H2. Get a quote now, and if Outsurance can't save you money, ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Outsurance, licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines Soccer News, Miguel Cardoso leads Mamelodi Sundowns into the Champions League last 8. And in rugby news, there's the Boks. They're still on top as England slide to 4th in the updated World Rugby Rankings. We'll bring you more details around 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good news coming in from the Lenasia Protea Glenside. The N1 up in the Deep Cliff interchange was heavy earlier. It has eased up quite nicely. Still some big pressure coming in from Ekurhuleni. N12 Benoni through Boksburg is heavy. And then the N12 and R24 solid coming into Galuli's interchange. Also the N3 through Galuli's queues this morning from Elan's interchange right through the interchange up until you get to Modderfontein Road in the Edenvale area. Plenty of traffic on the Mike 1 today heading to Sandton, northbound from Boysons, southbound from about Allendale Road on the N1 onto the M1. Very heavy there. Motorists going out of Durban, a couple of issues to note. One is an earlier crashing just by Pavilion Mall. Traffic through Spaghetti Junction looking a lot better now, so that's good. But then there is a crash at Ashburton, so traffic lining up arriving in from Linfield Parkside. Also terrific pressure around the M13 45th cutting. That run in from Westville or out from Sherwood is very slow. Cape Town, a lot of pressure around the Strand Road, Van Riebeeck Road at the R300, in from Cowes River, out from Belleville through Stickland, all very slow. And Baden-Powell Drive is heavy on your way to Stellenbosch, queuing up at the N2, and that whole busy bridge over Baden-Powell means the N2 outbound sits from Khayelitsha just to get off at that Baden-Powell off-ramp. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8, welcome to it, the third hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM 104 to 107, but also streaming live on all of our digital platforms on the website safm.co.za, but also on Facebook, at SAFM Radio, also on X, also at SAFM Radio, and as well as on the YouTube channel SAFM Radio. As I always do at the start of the third hour, let me engage with some of the messages that you've been sending. As I always say, some people express themselves better when they put it in writing as opposed to calling in or recording a voice note. This one is unsigned, and it's addressed at the question I put to Professor Amanda Hose. To Biggie, the caller Biggie from Bombela, when I was talking about how you can present your defense in cases such as rape and sexual harassment without affronting the character of the accuser. This person says, why should the character of the malicious accuser not be affronted, Thulas? Affronting the character of the victim is exactly affronting the character of her victim is exactly what she has done, and therefore she too should not be spared as a deterrence. Well, fortunately, I don't make the rules. Fortunately, I'm not the one who makes these rules. These are established rules that say in matters like these, where sexual violence, sexual harassment, rape, and the likes, the defense has to be presented in a manner that doesn't affront the character of the person. It's no defense to say, for example, that in your view, this woman that you are accused of raping is a woman of, questionable character according to you. It's absolutely no defense. Fortunately, I don't make the rules. The rules are exactly what they are. And this must not be understood as me suggesting that this was at play at all in the Mbenenge matter. It's a point of conversation, a point of considering these concerns that are being raised about how to properly deal with issues of sexual harassment, sexual violence and rape, where consent becomes a question in those matters. So fortunately, the answer to your question, why it should not be affronted, lies in the evolution of the rules of how these matters are dealt with in the courts and platforms such as those. That's all I will say to that. Then someone else says, that is a shocker. South Africa isn't serious about itself. Imagine 2009 to date, and still the judges are still the same in number. Anyway, seeing that judges don't really retire, quote unquote, would it not be better to invite them back to reduce the workload, i.e. Meyiwa judge? And this in turn can increase the hiring of administrative personnel and in that way also reduce unemployment. There you have it. Another suggestion of how to deal with the backlogs and the caseloads that the judges are dealing with. And then someone else here says, how about not allowing so many appeals? If someone has money, they can repeatedly appeal. Stop Stalingrad tactics. Unfortunately, that's not how these things work. For as long as there's an avenue of appeal, there will always be that appeal or, review or many, many approaches to it. There is a point, of course, where you've exhausted your appeals, but you can't say we can't allow so many appeals. Unfortunately, that's not how you are only done with your appeals when they are truly, well and truly done, and the full stop has been put to all of those appeals. And then let me read one or two that have to do with King Buyelekaya Dalindyebo. Someone here says, Hlati actually says, on behalf of the Abatembu nation, I take this opportunity to say, Dalindyebo, to our king, who has always been on the side of truth, from apartheid to freedom. That is not really free today, says Hlati. And then lastly, Naveen in Durban, why do we have royalty and traditional leadership in 2026? It's hilarious as commoners we allow it and people believe it's their God-given rights. But we know royalty was installed by murder, brutality and oppression. Wake up, people, and reject everything, even close to monarchy. Start with defending these people with horrible parts. All right? Okay. Says Naveen in Durban. All right, keep the conversation going. Let's keep it going. The number to dial 086 000 2032 and your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Let's get into it. The third hour of the morning brief on this Monday.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable. You receive up to 745,000 rand worth of legal services per year. Our range of plans include cover for you, your spouse, children, and extended family. Plans include cover for civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Whether it's protection orders, gender-based violence, uncontested divorce, or poor service, your Clientele Legal lawyer will be there to assist you. Our services are convenient. Simply pick up the phone and call your lawyer or send us an email and we'll get back to you. All plans include a bail benefit of up to 5,000 rand and we'll go to the police station and pay it for you. Plus, Clientele Legal offers you 24-hour telephonic legal advice. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Ezimnyama Ngenkani want to be remembered for stopping the reigning champions. However, Masandawana believe the Buccaneers will experience a long night of sadness.
This is the Betway Premiership. Lisekazini forever.
Catch the big clash between Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns on Wednesday, 18 February at 6:30 p.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC3. Then at 7:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Blues are going all out for maximum points at Stamford Bridge.
Stevaus flipped it back to him. The Brazilian connection working nicely. João Pedro for two, and he's done it. The Blues Brazilians at the double here.
However, it is a must-win game for the Clarets to try to escape from the danger zone.
Deflected and in! Oh, Burnley lead! Sharp lead for the Clarets. Bashir Humphries will claim it. It's got a deflection and Burnley have got an early lead here.
This is the Premier League. Chelsea FC versus Burnley FC, the Saturday 21 February at 4:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
17 minutes after 8, let's talk health and wellness for a moment. Epilepsy under the spotlight as the country concludes the observance of National Epilepsy Week, which ended yesterday, and having recently marked World Epilepsy Day on the 9th of February. Epilepsy is one of the world's most common and neurological disorders, affecting around 50 million people globally. Yet in this country, it remains underdiagnosed, misunderstood, and heavily stigmatized. According to the Neurological Association of South Africa, up to 70% of people living with epilepsy could live seizure-free life if properly diagnosed and treated, highlighting a significant treatment gap driven by limited awareness, access, and persistent myths. Let's speak to Dr. James Butler, Executive Board Member of the Neurological Association of South Africa. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. Let's start off perhaps by outlining the prevalence of epilepsy in our country and the degree to which we understand this condition.
Yeah, thanks, and good morning to the listeners. We don't have exact prevalence figures from South Africa, but studies across the world show that about 1 in 100 people in the population at that point in time has epilepsy, which is defined by having recurrent epileptic seizures.
And part of the issues we are dealing with in our country, talk to me about the diagnosis, the extent to which people are diagnosed and understand the condition and therefore would be able to live a seizure-free life with access to diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah, so there are many forms of epilepsy, just to say that at the outset. And for the vast majority of people, there is very good treatment. And the problems or the challenges, as you call them, across the world, and these aren't confined to South Africa, they're a matter of degree from one country to the next, but are firstly getting accurate diagnoses. So not every seizure that happens is an epileptic seizure. Problems arise because people get minor seizures. They're in fact way more common than major seizures. And minor seizures might just be memory blanks, little lapses in memory. There might be strange feelings, etc. And so these are missed or misdiagnosed. And so really the problems are having access to good healthcare systems or good healthcare. We have about 180 neurologists in the entire country. There's a shortage of neurologists across the world. Obviously, there are higher rates of neurologists per a million of the population in developed countries. And there's a huge skew, as there is for other services in this country, between the private sector and the public sector.
Yeah, in fact, say a bit more about that. If someone wanted to check, whether or not they are epileptic, and they needed to access that service, that diagnosis service in the public sector, what are we looking at versus in the private sector?
Yeah, so the first is, as you know, the system is tiered, and so you have to access it via the primary healthcare system in the state sector. And then if there are problems either in establishing the diagnosis or the treatment, then generally the treating doctor should or could refer the patient on to secondary and potentially tertiary care services where there are neurologists, and there are very good neurology departments across the country in the academic centres, and there are facilities such as EEGs, which are with the history and people's observations key for making the diagnosis in some instances that are difficult to diagnose. And then obviously some people need brain scans additionally.
Doc, I realized that I actually moved from a premise of a common and assumed understanding of epilepsy. You did define, you did talk to its prevalence, but I don't think I asked you to define what it is in terms of its neurological features as well as some of the known causes and factors that predispose a person to being epileptic.
Yeah, so just to say at the outset, most people who have epilepsy are people walking around the street who are intellectually normal. Certainly people with various brain injuries, either congenital or that they've acquired in life, are at increased risk for epilepsy, but it doesn't certainly not confined to them. To come back to your first question about definition, anyone who has what's called an unprovoked epileptic seizure and is at high risk for having more, and that's more than a 50% risk of a recurrence, is defined as having epilepsy. There are a myriad of causes. Genetic causes are very common. They might the problem might not be in someone's family, yet be genetic, and that's a result of a combination of genes that one has inherited and with some mutations mixed in. It's perhaps useful to know that every single one of our brain cells, a bit like our faces, are determined by many, many genes, and how they fire electrically is determined by many genes. So genes are a common cause of seizures, and in such people are intellectually typically normal and have normal brain scans. And then the other causes are acquired ones in life. So these can be right from the time that one lies in your mother's womb, having difficult labors with shortage of oxygen there, and then during life, various little... when the brain is formed, by the way, a common cause is that just like you get little birthmarks in the skin, you get them in the brain, and that's quite a common cause of epilepsy. And then various insults or injuries to the brain in life, which might be infections, which might be perhaps the most common one in the population, alongside infections, are brain injuries, car accidents, and other forms of brain injury.
Yeah.
And then infections like, rare infections like encephalitis, Not an uncommon cause infection in South Africa in some of the rural parts, particularly where pigs roam freely, is cysticercosis, which is a tapeworm, a pig tapeworm.
Lastly, Doc, what is the call to action to someone listening to us? I know that we have this conversation at least once a year, and we do it because it's important to emphasize and re-emphasize these messages around these issues. So what is the call to action to someone listening to us about, what they should be aware of and what they should be doing in order to better understand epilepsy, in order to better deal with people who have epilepsy within their family, within their social circles?
Well, I think from an advocacy point of view, if I was living with epilepsy, I would be relentless in my pursuit of trying to get control of my seizures, because for most people that's possible. And sometimes it requires a bit of patience with multiple changes in medications. And if those don't work, one can pursue the possibility of epilepsy surgery. We have more than 20 anti-seizure medications available. And I think one has to be determined, and you have to walk the walk with someone, a healthcare practitioner who's going to walk the walk with you. It's important that you educate yourself about the condition and its management. Epilepsy.com is a good resource for a lot of people. There's the Cleveland Foundation, the Mayo Clinic, and in the UK there's a very good website called Epilepsy Action. And in South Africa we've got Epilepsy South Africa. And these are all good resources. And the point there is that if you understand your condition, you can empower yourself, and you can certainly improve your life. And common precipitants of seizures like too much alcohol and sleep deprivation are certainly part of the management of the condition.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your time. Dr. James Butler is Executive Board Member of the Neurological Association of South Africa.
Hey there, need to know your TV license balance but don't want to wait? No sweat. Just send a quick SMS with your ID or TV license number to 44210. Remember, standard SMS rates apply. And presto, your balance pops right up anytime, anywhere. It's as easy as pie. So why procrastinate? Give it a try and get your info in a flash. T's and C's apply.
Eskom is upgrading old electricity meters with modern smart meters, giving you clarity, control, and confidence. With your new meter, you'll be able to see your usage in real time, giving you the power to manage your electricity with ease. Smart meters are accurate and help Eskom respond faster to issues. Please allow their authorized installers access to install your new meter. For more information, visit the Eskom website. Eskom, redefining for a better future.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
So I don't know if you can hear it somewhere in the background. There's a bit of noise that, permeates through, right? The walls are vibrating with sound. And it's all because the team at Radio 2000, DJ Sbu and them, are in studio just across from us. We moved studios a little bit. So the result is that our colleagues from 2000 are having the time of their lives. I'm going to go check on them in a moment or so. So yeah, just to say hi to them. Anyway, let me go to your WhatsApp voice notes that have been coming through. Let me take this one. Someone who wants to talk about foot and mouth disease.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Good morning to the SAFM listeners. Thulasizwe, this foot and mouth outbreak in South Africa is creating problems. It's also threatening our food security. Countries like Zambia, they've suspended all import livestock from South Africa. So it is a serious problem that needs to be addressed urgently. I know that there are vaccines that are expected to enroll soon, but sooner than later, this thing is becoming a problem, a serious one. Sewanele Pretoria.
Sewanele, thank you. I agree with you 100%. The declaration of a state of disaster around the foot and mouth disease is an important first step, but we really need to scale up our response to it. Otherwise, the entirety of the value chain is threatened. Exports, it's really, really becoming an emergency. I think you've captured it really well.
Morning, Tulas. I just want to ask something. What is justice in relation to this case that an e-hailing driver was robbed and killed? The suspect is on camera, but we still call that thug a suspect. And then the next thing, she'll be charged, and then she goes to jail. And then we feed her with our own taxes, especially we who are doing e-hailing. We are going to feed her while we are not safe because of the people like her. But what is justice, Galigar?
Sure. Wow, what a question. What is justice? Thank you for sharing it. And I'm not making light of your concerns, but I'm just the magnitude and gravity of the question you are asking. What is justice? If I knew the answer, I would be wealthy. But I get the points that you are asking. Points to do with how we approach the person once we've captured them and how we process them through the justice system. And I think I've made the point that how we deal with the ones that we revile the most. Is that the word? Revile, yeah. The worst of the worst in our society is more about us as a society and the values we hold. This is not to say that we don't hold people accountable for their actions. We must absolutely do, throw the full book at them, but without losing the character of who we are. We hear you out, we give you a fair hearing, and at the end of it, if we find you guilty, we find you guilty, we take you down and we lock you up, and life moves on. But that's not even half of the answer to the question of what is justice. It's an entire semester in jurisprudence at law school. Let's leave it there. Ed Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the ANC in Gauteng says it still wants to work with the EFF in all municipalities within the province. Earlier this month, the EFF leader Julius Malema said his party would end cooperation agreements with the ANC in Gauteng. Gauteng police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West a week ago. They will join a female suspect who was arrested on Friday. And the alleged gunman of the Bondi Beach shooting in Australia has appeared via video link at a magistrate court in Sydney. Naveed Akram faces 59 charges over the massacre at a Jewish celebration but is yet to take a plea. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy backlogs on the N14. This is going to Pretoria this morning. The Krugersdorp Highway between the R55 Pretoria West exit and the N1 Brockfontein interchange. Very heavy. And then if you're on the other section of the N14, the Ben Schoeman, there's heavy traffic coming through Brockfontein up as far as Jean Avenue in Centurion. So, for example, if you've come from Lanseria and Diepsloot side and you want to get through to Pretoria using the M14, you're going to effectively sit from that Pretoria West exit up to Jean Avenue. Going to hold you up very, very badly. Exit the N14 at Pretoria West, R55, and get onto some alternative routes. Crash on Grayston Drive near Webber, so from the Mike 1 Highway across to Ravonia Road, that section of Grayston very heavy. Also into Santon from Morningside, Ravonia and South Road, both of those routes very heavily backed up today. Durban, going out towards Pietermaritzburg, crash at Ashburton from earlier this morning. Looks like it's being cleared, so it's just the backlog of traffic to move through from Linfield Park. The M4 northbound, interestingly, heading through to Mhlanga, quite heavy from Blue Lagoon all the way through to Virginia Airport territory. And Cape Town, heavy pressure around the Newlands and Rosebank and Rondebosch areas. There's been some protesting again, a new term, a new university year, and more continuing of the protests that we see there annually, I'm afraid. So a lot of congestion. The protest unfolding at the UCT entrance, and that's backlogging into sort of Newlands, Rondebosch on routes like Clipper Road and Princess Anne, and badly affecting the M3 inbound from Constantia all the way up to that UCT exit. The rest of Cape Town's highways are busy. The N1 particularly bad from Plattercliff Hill right through to the city centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. So you're saying to me from booze to belief. You're talking here about the same Miguel Cardoso who's been under quite a fair amount of pressure from the high-achieving Masandawana.
Yes, still as the boos are loud, eh? But the belief apparently is louder. And that's only when the goals go in. That's how they roll at the mighty Masandawana. But exciting things for them, especially their coach, now that he's silenced Loftus doubters after guiding Mamelodi Sundowns into the CAF Champions League quarterfinals. Sundowns beat MC Alger 2-0 at Loftus Versfeld, with Brian Leon scoring in each half in a dominant display. The win easing the pressure on Miguel Cardoso, whose tactical flexibility is now winning over the doubters and some of the supporters. Let's go to Kaizer Chiefs. Their cup and continental campaigns are over, and it's a league or nothing. Amakosi bowed out of the CAF Confed Cup after a 2-1 loss to Zamalek. They must now focus on the Betway Premiership. Chiefs sit fourth on the log, with Sekhukhune United up in third, and crucial clashes against Sundowns and Pirates still to come in their title chase. Meanwhile, Morocco Swallows have formally cancelled the sale of their Betway Premiership status to Marumo Gallants and are now heading to the High Court. Swallows allege Gallants breached the 40 million rand agreement by failing to settle key payments, including outstanding tax and player-related debts. Now, if the court rules in their favour, Swallows could regain full control of their top-flight status, with the PSL and SAFA already notified. Rugby, Scotland's Six Nations upset of England has triggered a shake-up in the World Rugby rankings. The 31-20 win in Edinburgh, Gregor Townsend's 100th test in charge, sees England slip to fourth, while France move up to third. Scotland climbed to ninth, overtaking Italy after proving once again to be England's bogey team at home. At the top, South Africa remain number one in the world, ahead of New Zealand, as the Springboks continue to set the standards globally. Setting the standards here on SFM, I'm Zai Khan. We'll bring you more sport with John Hediker around 12:30.
The Business Update on SAFM.
All right, Ndauling, good morning to you once again. Let's start with what Minister Parkstau has been saying about talks that are underway to bring Asian auto factories to South Africa. So we're moving the conversation, it would seem, from importing fully assembled vehicles to assembly plants on our shores.
That's right, Tulas. And according to a News 24 article, Minister Dao is in talks with Chinese car maker BYD, Malaysia's Proton, and Japan's Suzuki to establish local manufacturing plants. The move comes as Chinese vehicle imports surged 45% last year to 36 billion rands, with those brands now making up 13% of the local passenger car market. Now, the rise has alarmed established manufacturers, who warn the sector is under pressure from cheaper imports. Government, of course, is trying to turn that demand into investment, encouraging global automakers to build locally rather than simply export to South Africa. Suzuki is expected to begin local production, which would mark its first plant in the country. Proton is also in discussions, while other Chinese brands are exploring expansion plans. President Ramaphosa has pledged continued support for manufacturing, saying government will protect strategic industries while working to grow investment and protect jobs in the auto sector.
So this conversation, the next conversation, Dowling, is one that we've sort of de-escalated, a shift away from reliance on Eskom, particularly by industry. It was a big thing when we had load shedding, when we were dealing with it. But some companies have decided that we've seen enough. What's that expression? Once beaten, twice shy. Sibanye is one of those, are they?
That's right. Tulasan Sibanye is one of many, if we're being quite honest, that is looking to somewhat get off the grid, right? And this time around, Sibanye has locked in more privately sourced renewable power for its local operations. The mining group has signed a 10-year, 138 megawatt renewable energy agreement with energy trader NOAA Group, adding to a growing portfolio of wind and solar supply deals. Electricity delivery under the new contract is expected to begin in the 2027-28 financial year. Now, combined with a recently announced 220 megawatt agreement with Atana Energy, Sibanye's total contracted renewable capacity now stands at around 765 megawatts. Now, by 2028, the company expects more than half of its local electricity needs to be met through renewable sources. Sibanye says the shift could cut energy costs by 20 to 30% compared with forecast wholesale tariffs, saving more than R1 billion a year, while also reducing annual carbon emissions by up to 2.63 million tons.
All right, lastly, Dowling, with everything you've told us this morning, give us a sense of where we are going in the markets today.
So trade likely to be choppy here at home, with trade, of course, being limited on the back of public holidays internationally. Back home as well, we have Telkom with a trading update. So investors will wake up to that and digest those numbers. In currency markets, the rand holding on to gains, with the local unit sitting at 15.92 to the dollar, 21.73 to the pound, and 18.90 to the euro. Over in commodities, oil range bound, trading just above $66 a barrel. Then back to equities, as mentioned, volumes will be limited with markets closed on account of President's Day in the US. Futures, however, in the green. A similar situation in Asia with public holidays in China and South Korea. Focus is on Japan as that economy managed to escape a technical recession.
Ndauling, thank you. That is Ndauling Lichela. With the first day of the updates for the new week, she'll be back with more updates for you.
Welcome to it. This is season 1 of Playlist happening right here at Maloka, and believe me, it's a party.
Set your reminder every Friday, 9 p.m. Playlist at Maloka is in the building.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, unfair blacklisting, or an uncontested divorce, Clientele Legal offers professional legal services to all South Africans. Our plans are affordable, and you receive up to 745,000 rand worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our nationwide legal teams are standing by to support you 24 hours a day. Plus, all plans include a 5,000 rand bail benefit. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
It's time to say yes to Montreux Jazz Festival Franschhoek, happening in Franschhoek from the 27th to the 29th of March 2026. It's 3 days. 2 stages, the Archers and Jazz Village, and a jazz-inspired multi-genre experience, plus a chilled Sunday slowdown to close. Featuring the legendary Salif Keita, Herbie Tswayedi, Andile Yenana, Ayanda Sigate, Sisonke Konti, Madala Gunene, and Sibusile Xaba, plus Mandisi Djankis, Billy Monama, Keseven Naidu, Mos Mokhale, Vus Mahlasela, and more than 20 additional artists still to be announced. This is where Montreux meets Africa. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster or visit mjfsa.com in partnership with the SABC.
Thulasizwe Simelane is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
Indeed, we are. What's that they say about planning for what you can't quantify. You can plan for it if you can quantify it, if you have the full understanding of its contours and what the issue entails. That's exactly what is happening with the country's cultural, creative, and sport industries in trying to shift away from viewing it as, the lighter side of life, but seeing it as the industry, the sector that it is. We're getting new data coming out. So we're told that the country's cultural, creative, and sports industries contributed an estimated 271.2 billion rand to the national economy in 2023, accounting for something in the region of 3.9% of GDP. And this is according to the Capstone Report 2025 by the South African Cultural Observatory. It has been commissioned by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, and it's hosted by the Nelson Mandela University. The report provides the most comprehensive economic mapping of the sector to date and arrives at a pivotal moment as artificial intelligence, geopolitical fragmentation, and digital disruption reshape global creative economies. Let's speak to Unathi Luchaba, who is Executive Director of the South African Cultural Observatory, who joins me now. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. I was talking about quantifying it so that you can plan for it, and also moving away from viewing the cultural and creative industries as the lighter side of life, a trivial pursuit, viewed by some in that way, but actually an industry on its own. What did this work reveal to you about the importance of the sector?
Good morning to us, and good morning to your listeners, and thank you for having us this morning. It's interesting, your last statement where you're talking about how we actually see the creative sector as an enjoyment. And actually, it is like that for most of us, because I know that some of us, as we were driving to office this morning, we were playing some of our favorite songs on repeat, and we probably watched some film over the weekend or some sport, and that is just an indication of how all of us in South Africa and around the world are part of a living flywheel, which is what we call South Africa's creative economy. And people, like you're saying, at the South African Cultural Observatory, as we have mapped in our mapping study report, which we are launching today, are actually making a living off that enjoyment.
So 250.7 billion rand is where it was previously, and it has grown between 2021 and 2023 to 271.2 billion rand quantified as a proportion of our GDP. What are the implications for jobs, for economic activity, the lines through which people are able to participate in this sector of our economy?
All right. Firstly, maybe just to give you a bit of background to this. The mapping study, the report we are launching today, is our fifth edition since SACO has been established in 2015. And the previous mapping study focused on the COVID-19 pandemic. As you would recall, the whole world went on suffered through the COVID-19 pandemic, and we had to do a report looking at how it has affected the sector. And post the pandemic, we're still continuing and monitoring that performance. However, we're also looking at emerging trends, as you are mentioning. And yes, the sector contributes roughly 4% to South Africa's GDP. And to put that into context, the creative economy and sports economy, which is also the new mandate we've got from the National Department of Sport and Culture, is about the same size as agriculture. So, in terms of implications, these sectors employ more than 1.4 million South Africans, and that's just not big city staff. We're talking about filmmakers, we're talking about festival organizers, we're talking about designers, we're talking about content creators. These jobs ripple through supply chains, through local printing shops, through costume makers, and etc. So it's an economy that moves people and moving money as well.
And you mentioned that for the first time you are quantifying also the contribution of the sport sector. I'm astounded that had never been factored into the equation and quantification of the contribution of the cultural and creative industries. What's the result of factoring in sport within the bigger picture of the industry?
For us, it was obviously, as I mentioned, the first time that we are measuring the impact of sport, and the 4% GDP contribution is made up of sport and in the creative economy. In fact, from this 4%, 1.1% contribution of this GDP contribution is coming from sport, whilst the 3% comes from the creative economy. So what we are actually learning is that this data is actually showing us a picture of the data that's showing us a nation that's in motion, a nation that sounds like it's in a place of possibility. We're looking at when you're talking about the contribution of the creative economy in the sports sector, one of the sectors or the subsectors that contributes largely to this GDP contribution is the sports sector. It's actually audiovisual and interactive media, followed by sports, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's followed by performance and celebration, which is where your music industry is, and also your festivals and your cultural events, which also include sports, by the way.
How are you hoping, as a parting shot, Unathi, how are you hoping that this data that is now available will be used in informing policy decisions around the cultural and creative sectors, around people who are active in those sectors as well? For instance, around their welfare. Recently, there was this acknowledgement of cultural and creative workers as being workers in the sense of labor laws in the country. Is that the kind of impact you are hoping for, that it leads to a paradigm shift in how we view and how we plan and policies that we put in place for these sectors?
Yes, we're hoping for that, Thulas, and for more. Actually, what we are hoping for through these mapping study reports, obviously, it's for policymakers to look at these reports, and then these they use to inform the policy decisions that they have to make, and also investment decisions that have to be made on these two sectors. As you would know, one of the biggest cries by this sector is that there's been the issue of funding. Funding is not the only standalone issue, but I think it really does stand out. It has been a trend over the years. But I think, as a parting shot, I would say we need policies and investment that ensures inclusive transformation, and especially now in a world where the world is being transformed and AI is transforming how creative, even sports, are actually consuming and creating their products. So we need policies that ensure inclusive digital transformation as well, so that innovation is not just a privilege of just a few, but the right of all creative South Africans. But we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
We need all people to come on board so that we grow our credibility as a nation.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. Unathi Luchaba is Executive Director of the South African Cultural Observatory. There you are. That's the size of the cultural and creative industries, as well as sport, to our GDP and its contribution. And now that we appreciate that and the value it brings, it's up to you and I what we do with that information and how it changes how we value these sectors and how we help them thrive, really.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy on Joburg's Mike 1 today. It is the standout highway. The rest of the highway is doing generally okay, easing up, but not the Mike 1. Southbound from Woodmead down to around Caller Drive as you line up past Santon. That's heavy. And northbound, you've got the usual backlog coming through Boyce and Braamfontein, but then from about Parktown up through Killarney on your way towards Grayston Drive. Still very heavy on that side as well. A little bit of pressure on the M1 South to William Mandela and the R21, the roadworks at Olifantsfontein, causing some delays if you're away from the airport heading towards Pretoria. Quite a big backlog backlog passing Tembisa, unusual for this time of morning. Oh, there's a breakdown there as well, so breakdown in amongst the roadworks. That's why it's so bad. The N14, Krugersdorp Highway to Pretoria, still backing up towards the N1 Brakfontein interchange. We had some delays on the N14 Ben Schoeman after that going through to Jean Avenue, but thankfully that's all eased up. Durban looking a lot better than it was earlier this morning. Also the crash at Ashburton on the N3 going into Pietermaritzburg. That is being cleared, but there's another one now. Hearing about a crash just after the ramp from Linfield Park. So while that earlier crash at Ashburton had cleared, there's another one now just before Ashburton, and that's sort of backing traffic quite heavily. If you're on your way to PMB, you might want to exit around Linfield Park, hit the alternative. Cape Town protesting at UCT this morning, so the M3 inbound very heavy from Wynberg Hill all the way to that UCT exit, and there's a bit of backlog going through Rosebank, Rondebosch and Newlands as motorists are sort of approaching the UCT entrance. Deal with that as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Clientele is here to safeguard you and your family with compassion because life happens. Be part of a family that truly cares. Our funeral dignity plans have helped South Africans bury their loved ones with dignity for more than 30 years. Let us help you create a meaningful tribute that honors your life and those of your loved ones. We pay out within 24 hours and you will get double accident cover with a clientele funeral plan. Our plans are affordable. Pick the option that suits your needs. Easy to apply, no medical examinations and no paperwork. SMS SAFM to 48031. That's 48031. Clientele Life is an authorized FSP and licensed life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Ezimnyama Ngenkani want to be remembered for stopping the reigning champions. However, Masandawana believe the Buccaneers will experience a long night of sadness.
This is the Betway Premiership. Lisakazini forever.
Catch the big clash between Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns on Wednesday, 18 February at 6:30 p.m. live on SABC Plus and SABC 3. Then at 7:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Yeah. All right. I do want to take all of your calls. I've got 3 calls on standby, but I'm curious. Someone wants to comment on smart meters. I suppose it's triggered by the live read that we have to do from time to time. So, yeah, I wonder what that is about.
Morning to us and SAFM listeners. There's a lot of talk of these smart meters, and I would like to understand exactly what is so smart about them, because to me, smart has something to do with internet connectivity and such. So I'd like to understand what is so smart about them.
Fair point. I think perhaps the team at ESCOM may want to answer that question at some point. What is so smart about them? Yeah, I agree. Rather than, inherently accepting that they are smart meters, what's smart about them? All right. Tabiso in Polokwane, good morning.
Good morning. Just a quick one before I get to my point. I'm not actually surprised by Jacob Zuma claiming membership of the ANC, because normally when you are about to go to elections, you'll go renting and claiming membership of the ANC, say I'll take them to court and all of that. I don't think that lie would suffice anymore. He did it in the previous elections. I don't think he will survive again. You must just welcome the fact that he has started a new organization and leave the ANC alone. Yeah. But it's not what I wanted to do. There are 2 things that I've noticed last week on the State of the Nation address. One is the issue of the deployment of soldiers in parts of the country, and 2 is the National Illicit Disruption Program. Maybe that is the matter. The second one is the matter that we may have to look at it deeply in terms of what is it that it
does it entail? Yeah.
What it entails. You remember the the announcement by British American Tobacco that they were going to leave the country based on that, and based on the illicit sales of cigarettes and alcohol. Maybe that's a matter that needs proper, looking at it as to what is it that the president wants to say. How is that program going to unfold? So that we exactly know. But the issue of deployment of soldiers, but perhaps maybe the Cape Town, the wall, the issue of deciding of the wall was that it meant that we had, given up, that we're not going to resolve the issue of crime, and ended up saying no, but perhaps the wall will be able to resolve crime that is happening in Cape Town. Maybe the soldiers will solve. We're not going to have a wall in Cape Town. But that's going to be bad for a country. Imagine moving from the airport to the city. You see a wall. You can't see the other. You can't see the other. You still remember the article by the president, the former president Thabo Mbeki, on two nations. The two nations, in reference to
one nation, two economies.
One nation, two economies. Yes. Yeah, remember it was as a result of
Sorry, Tabi. So thank you. I've got to move on. Thank you. I hear you. But I do recall that the justifications for the wall, when we spoke to the mayor, I think it was the mayor, or was it the safety MMC? I think it was the mayor. He was saying that part of it actually is beyond issues of crime. It has to do with just safety, people crossing over that highway and also being attacked, but also saying the response will be beyond building a wall. Of course, the proof of it all is in the eating, really, when it finally starts taking shape, how exactly it will play out and what it will mean socio-economically. David in Pietermaritzburg, you're my last caller. Short and sharp for me, if you don't mind. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
No, I'm concerned about lack of transformation in former model schools, more especially in Durban. When you go to most of the schools, you find that employment there favors whites and Indians, and there's exclusion of black teachers. The black teachers that you find in these schools are those that only teach isiZulu. And for me, I wish
David,
you can invite it on the Department of
David, I tell you what, David, you raised such an important point at this late stage of the show, and I want to be fair to you. I want you to have the time to expand and for me to engage you. Stay on hold. Let me ask the team to take your number so that tomorrow what we do is the very first moment we get to take calls, we take a call from David. Tim, if you don't mind, please take David's number and then we can call him back so that we make sure that we give him the opportunity to ventilate the issues so that there's enough time for engagement by other listeners as well on the show. Thank you for listening. That's how we live. That's where we leave it for this morning. Thank you for listening and for your engagement. The Talking Point is up next with Kathy Mutlahlana. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. You've been briefed.
In our top stories, ANC Gauteng still seeks EFF partnership despite Malema's utterances, and more arrests in e-hailing drivers' murder. Good morning. The ANC in Gauteng says it still wants to work with the EFF in all municipalities within the province. Earlier this month, the EFF leader Julius Malema said his party would end cooperation agreements with the ANC in Gauteng. He accuses the ANC chairperson in Ekurhuleni, Nkosindiphile Xhakaza, of wanting to push the EFF out of its governance responsibilities in the metro. ANC Provincial Coordinator Hope Apu spoke on the sidelines of the ANC's Provincial Gauteng 2 Daily Khotla in Johannesburg.
Still feel that we can cooperate with them because the EFF is not being kicked out of any municipality by the ANC. All our regions are part of the discussions, including our Potback. We've always been in touch with the EFF, including that time there was a problem between the PA and the EFF in Johannesburg. We discussed that with the EFF. The issue we're discussing with the EFF is about the number of MMCs in Spesam in Ekurhuleni.
Gauteng police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the killing of an e-hailing driver in Pretoria West a week ago. They will join a female suspect who was arrested on Friday. Police say preliminary investigations suggest the victim was murdered, allegedly by a man and woman who had requested an e-hailing ride last Wednesday. They say the hijacked vehicle and the driver's body were later found in Atteridgeville. Gauteng Provincial Police spokesperson Mavela Masondo says the 3 suspects will appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges of hijacking and murder.
2 male suspects who are aged 30 and 26